I had some weird experiences in my life, and I wanted to know if it really happened or did I just imagine it? Because I've had some like visitation experiences, and very recently this year, I've had two occasions where I felt like I was actually taken, but I have no recollection of like inside of a craft or anything like that. I just actually remember feeling my body lift up off the bed, answer the question simultaneously, even though we're spread apart by distance. But I think that the only thing faster than the speed of light is consciousness. So I think that's how they do it.
Yes.
Hi, Grant and everybody. I'm Pat Pearsall. I have been for the last 7 years part of Dr. Greer's team. Before
nice.
that, I basically, my interest is consciousness, meditation, consciousness, and the understanding of frequency, and trying to get people to wrap their heads around all this frequency.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that's kind of who I
Yeah.
am. This technology that everybody would love to unlock, and all the, really even the 0 point energy and all of the exotic technologies, right? If we somehow wrest those technologies from the hands of wherever they are, there really is no one on the face of this earth, in my estimation, with a commensurate consciousness level, frequency level, really to control that for the good of all.
I feel that they understand our cultural differences. And so, like our religious differences, our cultural differences, at least in this stage of the game, although I don't see it personally as a game, in order to convey their messages and convey that universal consciousness, that awareness.
If you have a near-death experience, you float away and you look at your body, you realize the consciousness is not in the body. The body is in the consciousness. The consciousness is floating around. Oneness is absolutely, to me, the key message. And that's all evil is caused by the mistaken belief in separation through all the channelers, through near-death experience, this idea that everything is one thing, there is no separation, and love is the core of the universe, the bottom of the universe. You hear these messages over and over again. And I will say that there is a lesson if you actually look deep into these, and all the people that I did with the contact modalities, whatever they were using, those were the main keys, I think. But I think there is a field where everything is in the field. And so I actually wrote a book called Inspired, where I looked at inventions, and I look at these people and you think, oh, they're just smart.
My name is George with the G. I am a mod for the UAP Society with the Lato Files. And I want to personally thank you for providing us with this second opportunity to talk with you and to learn about your research and how we could best forward all of this work that you've been doing over the decades with respect to the phenomena. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to my other co-hosts. They can introduce themselves, what platforms they're on, and what got them interested into the phenomena. And I guess we can have an open discussion to best learn from you.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay, Christian, go ahead.
Hey, I'm Christian Ramirez, and I'm with the Transcendence Podcast on YouTube and TikTok. I share information there. I started researching into all of this, getting into near-death experiences. I had some weird experiences myself, and crazy enough, the near-death experience stuff brought me right into hypnotherapy and the UFO phenomenon, and that's where I discovered the connection between all of that and consciousness.
Wow. So you're awake. Who wants to go next?
My name is Jonathan Leeser. I'm 51 years old, and for most of my life, I've believed / known of entities throughout the universe, essentially, and visitation of Earth by such beings, which I believe are many. I guess it's just something that was inherent in me. So currently, right now, I have a TikTok channel called We Are One Consciousness, and I'm looking into eventually getting into YouTube. So my experiences have grown exponentially over the past year and a half with contact of entities that come and visit my fiance and I while we're at home. So
Yeah,
Wow.
you have some weird stuff.
Yeah, you mentioned TikTok. Maybe I just throw a question in here before we move on. You guys are mentioning TikTok. I've never used it. I mean, is this the platform of the future? Is this where it's happening? Is it a big topic? Consciousness, UFOs, all this kind of stuff on TikTok?
Yeah, it's
There you go.
definitely a place to grow. I personally exploded on there, and so did these two others. We have like over 15,000 followers. Gray has over 17 now. John almost 20,000 followers. So
There you
Yeah.
go. That's the future. That's where I appreciate the fact that there's young people moving in here and pushing this on, because there was no young people for many, many years.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I agree with
Daniel.
that statement.
Yeah, yeah.
I noticed
Beautiful.
that. Yeah, you watch all the old videos and then you see they're just an older crowd in there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be like, I used to notice there would be you'd have a room with maybe 1,000 people in it. There'd be maybe 10 young people and one African American. Everybody else was
Mhm.
just
Yeah.
white haired, people who I guess got into it for whatever, but it's almost like there's something happening now, and it's a different world, and a different group is going to lead the parade now.
And so I was saying last night, it's like a passing of the torch.
Yeah.
And that's very good. And we're definitely leading each other down the right path.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks for your work, guys. Daniel.
Hi, my name is Daniel Nichols, and thank you again for coming on with all of us. I really appreciate your
Yeah.
time. So I've had a lot of experiences through my life, grew up in a really odd area, and had a lot of kind of paranormal activity that happened to me and my family. I've always been interested in the subject. It was a number of years ago. I ended up stumbled upon a group that was helping with finding missing people. So being unbeknownst to me, for 4 years I was doing remote viewing and really didn't know what I was doing, but I was doing it. Stumbled across different books with various people who are part of the Stargate program and kind of expanded my knowledge on that. I then realized some of the entities and stuff I had been interacting with were NHI. So this year I've definitely been put myself out there and networked with amazing people like everyone here. And very much like how John talked about, this year has been wild for experiences, and have had just last week, like channeling. I channeled and like other stuff like that, and my girlfriend was pretty freaked out. It was just been a lot of a lot of interesting interactions when it comes to this type of thing. So yeah, thank you so much.
Wow, fantastic. I got some questions for you.
Mhm.
Somebody else has joined us here. James, you there? So maybe the first question I can ask, and just throw it out there to people, is, and I was posting this on Twitter this morning. Everybody's sort of into the fact that we're going to get this confirmed, that it's all going to be. There's even a statement out today that Biden's going to stand up and make a statement and all this kind of stuff, and that's fine. But the way I was posting these things, where I say, like the craft comes and comes across 1,000 miles, and then they forget where they parked it, and they leave this craft for us to find. It's totally intact, and they're doing right-hand turns, and I say, like, why are they doing right-hand turns? Why are they dropping from 80,000 feet down to sea level in 7/8 of a second? Why are they taking off like a bullet? Why do they have to go so fast when they take off? And so maybe I can throw the question out: is, what do you think this is about? Are you guys getting messages as to what this is all about? Other than I call it the circus, which is what you need. Because and people get mad when they say, call it a circus. It's not a circus. I say, yeah, it is. It's sort of like Jesus Christ. I mean, if Jesus Christ hadn't done the circus stuff, nobody would have known who this guy was. And that's the thing. So they've done this circus act, and everybody's now paying attention. So I just throw it out to anybody. Has anybody got a message, what they think they want us to know, or why they're here, or who they are? Well, not so much who they are, but is there a bottom line message as to why we're engaging with whatever this is?
Daniel, I'd like for you to start if you don't mind.
Okay. Hmm. Well, I mean, I could go into some of the details that I got from the channeling session I did last week, but one thing that let's see, sorry, let me pull up those really quick. One thing that I did get from them was that, let's see, give me one moment, I'm pulling it up.
Okay, now let me ask one question. Are you relay channeling or are you trans channeling? Because you watched the interview. Well, I sent the material. I can send it to you as well. I have an experiment I want to do with channeling with trans channelers. So there's a relay channeler where you're sort of relaying messages back and forth, and then a trans channeler, whatever takes over, and the person is not there. They're sort of sitting in the back seat or in the trunk or whatever, and they really know what's going on. And we're trying to do this experiment where JZ Knight, I don't know if you know the experiment. JZ Knight, Ramtha actually told her to run this experiment. And what she did was in a trance channel, and I'm like Bashar had agreed to do this, and it just hasn't come off yet. And trance mediums and stuff like that, where it's actually a trance situation. So JZ Knight, what happened with her was that they took her DNA when she was normal. Then she went into the trance and took her DNA, and it changed. It changed from female to male, and it was a completely different nationality and stuff. And that comes to this idea that whatever consciousness is running the body, that's the DNA that's going to show up. And so we got the one white crow, and everybody said, "Oh, JZ Knight faked it." And I said, "Well, maybe she faked it, but what does it take to run another experiment?" So, so are you trans channeling or are you relay channeling?
So it started in relay channeling, and again, I've not channeled before, so I've like when I've gotten information, it'll come in my head like as like words,
Yeah.
or phrases or expressions, and then I
Okay.
transcode it. But halfway through, I felt myself kind of go back, and then they were like forward, and they were actually speaking through, and I couldn't control it. And my girlfriend was kind of freaking out because by that time I was starting to shake, like I was convulsing my body. And I think it partly was because it was the first time doing it. I've
Yeah.
heard this from other people. They have had similar physical responses, but yeah, that's so it started as one and then shifted into another.
Was it a collective, and what did they call themselves?
Not sure about what they call yet. I haven't gotten to that point. I've been more so interacting, but it was a collective. They had, so John's entities, and he can talk about that in a little bit. They had conveyed that they actually knew each other or had some form of alliance, and they were aware. So they addressed my girlfriend's concerns first because she's been really worried about my different encounters, and they're like, "Don't worry." Like, they stated that we were family. That they were connected through me, that I was safe. And this was while I was receiving the information. And then when they actually started coming through where I was not in control, they said, "There's been a lot to do in the next 5 years to happen, 5 specifically. Connection was planned, and it wouldn't happen, and it would happen if it was, and it was up to you. Disclosure of the others is happening no matter what. And integration on the spiritual into the physical needs to happen." And yeah, that was like the most prevalent part. And when they were speaking integration, I was almost not yelling it, but it was very coming through very strongly. Like, when I think about it now, I could go to the wall and start writing it all over. Like, it was very
Wow.
very bold, like, in my mind. And so that was like, they addressed other things, including just some of stuff that I unpacked, that I had a cover memory of owls when I was young. I remember that specifically, and I realized that was a cover memory. And so they addressed that. I was kind of saying sorry for causing this trauma. They specifically told me that. My girlfriend was writing everything down. I was crying, but they were still talking through, so I wasn't fully like emotionally able to express that until they receded, and then I started crying. But it was a really interesting experience, and I'm still unpacking. Also, so John, while I was going through that channeling session, he actually sensed it while he was sleeping. He actually texted me later and was like, "Hey, I saw someone who was like convulsing," and someone I knew, and there was entities talking through him, and I was like, "Yeah, that was me. Sorry for."
You did the same with me. Daniel actually messaged me in the middle of the night. It was like 3 a.m. for me, and my girlfriend had woken me up, just freaking out, like, "You okay?" Like, because I've had like sleep paralysis over the years, and that's when some of the strange stuff started happening. And sure enough, Daniel messaged me like a couple minutes after she had woken me up, and she's like, he's like, "I felt like something happened." And I was like, "I don't
Yeah.
know, man, but like I don't believe in coincidences." And that was really weird of you to like just message me out of the blue like that.
So when
And
I was napping, it was kind of strange because, I didn't know what Daniel was experiencing, at least consciously. And so we get into the consciousness. of us being all kind of intertwined. So it was kind of one of those things to where when I was dreaming, I could see that there was this glowing yellow, kind of like the sun yellow being that was talking to or discussing information which I couldn't garner to a kind of like an astral form. And the astral form with that information that was being back and forth communicated was causing this astral form to vibrate like it was a frequency. And as I was witnessing this from the side, it's hard to explain. There's this different perspective, as if you're like, I don't believe it was a remote viewing thing, but I was still kind of bearing witness to it. And so my body was extremely anxious, very, very anxious. Like I felt like I was running a marathon. And so I was tossing and turning in bed quite a bit. So when I woke up, I kind of gained my senses after a short period of time, and Daniel and I talked to each other quite frequently. And so I had just messaged him before he messaged me, and I said, I had the most restless sleep, and this is what I was experiencing during my sleep. And then he confirmed that he had actually had that channeling experience, and it's quite phenomenal. And it's just, to me, it's just proof that we're all interconnected in a way. That I've asked the entity group, which they've divulged that at least one of their names is M, if not the whole entire species is named M. And at one point in time during our communication, I asked if what I do is I use a dowsing rods or channeling rods. Okay. And then we also use a ghost box or a spirit box. And so I was asking through the rods, it's kind of, I can feel this energetic flow, like my frequency is going up within my entire body. And I'm like the instrument, if you will, of the communication that flows through me. I can feel it kind of at the back of my neck, the top of my head, that goes into the rods. And then when they want to speak, the rods will turn and they will face the spirit box when they want to speak through the spirit box. But that's just a quick explanation.
Wow.
But I asked if they knew of my friend Daniel, and through the spirit box, the song "My Brother Daniel" or "Daniel, My Brother," I'm sorry, from Elton John started
yeah.
to play.
Wow.
And I've also asked in the past. Chris and I had a rod session months upon months ago, and I asked if they could communicate through the Chris's rods on his side, and they answered a question as yes.
Simultaneously.
Simultaneously.
Yeah.
So they know of, just this one entity group knows at least about our connections that we have. And it's quite fascinating. I could go on, and I don't mean to ramble, but I could go on for hours about the experiences that we've had. And it's not something that has just really hit us out of the blue. It's taken time. There's been caution on both ends, on our ends and on theirs, as far as this communication between us. Now, when I say us, I always try to reassure them that I see us as one, where the universe is experiencing itself, but in different forms. So I am them, they are me, we are one. And from what we've garnered so much, I'll just end with this for the moment. What we've garnered so much from M is that they are really coming across with the message of love, and I think that that's what they're trying to prepare us for when it comes to the disclosure, however it may happen, is love, and it's a love that is incomprehensible to the current state of consciousness that humanity has. I'm sorry, I said I would end it there. I just want to throw in a really quick thing. So there was I was just very fresh with trying to use the rods. And at this point in time, we hadn't received our spirit box yet. And we usually will talk to them in our kitchen because, you know, that's where the hearth is. And I was asking genuinely, as I always do, if I would ever see them, if I would ever meet them face to face. Not that that's what I need as proof, but it's always something that internally I want to experience. And they said, not at this time. So, yes, no, as far as the rod's point. And I said, can I sometime in my lifetime? And they had said yes. And then I said, I wish it could be now, and not trying to be selfish. But what had happened at that point in time is the rods, they give me hugs. I know it might sound hokey to some people, but they gave me my first hug. And that's when the rods, they're not just doing a yes, they're coming across. So the one on my right hand is touching my left shoulder. The one on my left hand is touching my right shoulder. When that happened, I had like that, my soul, like almost like dissolved. It's so hard to explain. I've never felt it before in my life. It was this feeling of universal, is the best I could put it. Again, words can't really describe universal love. And at that moment, I could feel them, you know, embracing me. And all of this built up anger and sadness and these negative feelings that I had built up within my soul of 51 years started peeling. I could feel the energy peeling away from my chest and my soul kind of, and I felt it kind of going towards the left, which I found was interesting. And I wept like I've never wept before. I wish that everyone could have that feeling.
To
Wow.
to add on really quickly to what you said, John, I did a session with the rods, and I was the one who told John about the rods, and he's like, "Oh, I want to get them," and then he ordered the same one as me. And um, when I got the rods, I had some weird experiences in my life, and I wanted to know if it really happened or did I just imagine it? Because I've had some like visitation experiences, and very recently this year, I've had two occasions where I felt like I was actually taken, but I have no recollection of like inside of a craft or anything like that. I just actually remember feeling my body lift up off the bed, and then it just blank. But before the first one had happened, when I felt my body lifting up, it was just a tremendous fear. And um, I just reminded myself everything I had learned because I've been researching this to just let go. It's okay. And nothing bad's going to happen to you. And as soon as I let go, I just felt this overwhelming sense of peace and love, universal awareness. I don't know what else to call it, kind of like John. And then I was put back. 2 days later, happened again. When I woke up from the first experience, I actually couldn't move my body again. I was in sleep paralysis mode, and I thought I saw someone shifting in the room. Thought it was my girlfriend, and it wasn't. Um, I snapped out of it. There's no one in the room. I asked her if it was her shifting around in the room, and she said no, that wasn't me. She had been outside the bedroom. And I asked John to do a session with his entities to ask the question. When I did the rods on my own, whoever came through, which I believe to be my grandmother, I've had the tendency to have like mediumship capabilities. And grandmother came through and she answered those questions. She said, yes, that was real. I asked her if ETs exist, interdimensional beings. Yes, they exist. I asked if disclosure was actually happening right now, and she said yes. I asked if the time frame, because there's a lot of weird stuff, even Chris Bledsoe talking about it, about this 2026 2027 time frame. Is there something to that? Is that real? They said yes. I did the session with John. His said the same thing, that I was actually taken. The time frame around that weird 2026 2027, or even after the next 5 years, you could say, they also said that yes, there is something to that. So that was very interesting. And they have proved, even with another friend outside of John, that as multidimensional, they can actually mess with our rods at the same time, answer the questions simultaneously, even though we're spread apart by distance. But I think that the only thing faster than the speed of light is consciousness. So I think that's how they do it.
Yes. Thought.
Now, Mr.
So,
Cameron, we have two guests that just joined us. They're two esteemed guests. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No,
But
that was it.
if James and Pat P, can you please introduce yourselves to Mr. Cameron and to the audience that's watching?
Hi, James. Hi, Grant and everybody. I'm Pat Pearsall. I have been for the last 7 years part of Dr. Greer's team.
Oh,
And before
excellent.
that, I basically, I don't know, from the age of 12 or 13. Oh yeah, there you go. Excellent. Long time meditator from I don't know, 50 years, 60 years or something. So that's kind of who I am. My interest is not along the lines of the reverse engineered technology. Do I know a lot about it? I do. Just having been, part of Dr. Greer's team for all these years. It is not my interest. My interest is consciousness, meditation, consciousness, and the understanding of frequency and what we all are, the energy of this world, and trying to get people to wrap their heads around all this frequency.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that's kind of who I am.
beautiful.
Yes. Thank you so much, Pat. That's very important. I've had a lot of thoughts about that. That we always, especially now in the media, it's always focusing on the technology.
Yeah.
They're able to use this technology because they're mature enough spiritually in order to be able to use it. And I think that part of the unlocking of the reverse engineering programs that I'm sure they've had psychics, just to put a general term out there, to try to understand, but I don't think that they have because of the maturity fully, because of the lack of maturity level within their spirituality and their consciousness. And I think that's really what's held us back.
I really don't think that I've had many discussions with Dr. Greer on this, and we kind of disagree on this a little bit. This technology that everybody would love to unlock, and all the really even the 0 point energy and all of the exotic technologies, right? If we somehow wrest those technologies from the hands of wherever they are, there really is no one on the face of this earth, in my estimation, with a commensurate consciousness level or frequency level, really to control that for the good of all. It just doesn't, I hate to step, I don't want to step on any toes, but in the science community, I don't see a lot of scientific people who are meditating and raising frequency, right?
Mhm.
And so basically, you're going to get it from one group, and you're going to make this horizontal move to another group who within a very short time are going to look exactly like the original group, because that kind of power corrupts. So that's my take on it. So my whole interest is teaching about consciousness.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I think I make a
I look
point
forward
on
to
that.
hear.
Oh, sorry.
Mhm.
I look forward to learning from you. I think we all have things to teach each other.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've gotten
I-
a couple really good downloads from these people.
Beautiful. I just want to make a point on that because people are talking now about this thing. It's apolitical and everybody's on board and we're all, one on this thing. And I said, just wait until it actually breaks. It'll be like anything else. It'll be like water, metal, whatever. The bad guys will use it for bad stuff, and people like Danny Sheen will try to save the earth. It's just another element of things that we've been given, and the sort of the divisions will take place as soon as this thing has been exposed, and that everybody's going to go their own way. The people that want to make money are going to try to make money. The people that want to make weapons are going to make weapons, and the people are going to try to save the earth. They're going to try to save the earth. But now they're talking about, oh, we're all together. Isn't this wonderful? And it's like, just give it time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a duality.
James,
That's
go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jim. So I'm sure George invited me on here because I have a perspective on all this, and that I do believe it's possible that this could all be happening. But I personally have experienced like several different potential realities, right? Like one could be pantheistic, one could maybe be we're about to experience some kind of judgment or a change is about to be made. So I've like experiencing these things from a first person perspective. And I'm left with like, okay, well, then which one do I choose, right? Do I even choose? Like, so I kind of don't engage with it regularly, and I refuse to because I have no idea what to. There's no common ground that I can go to be like, oh, this is true, this is not true. Like which one of those realities is true? Are we all one thing, including my dog and the monitor, or is there a monotheistic God who's about to render judgment on the planet? Like like so confused, I guess, and like on board with people here, except for I'm probably the most reserved. So I'd love to get your opinion on that.
I do want to say
Yes.
that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, George.
Yes, that kind of sparked a question in my mind that I'd like to pose to the group. In terms of these messages or these themes that channelers receive, or even religious people from varying faiths, are these consistent themes or messages that are conveyed by individuals such as yourself or whatever have you, who claim to channel alien beings or extraterrestrial life, interdimensional life? How do these messages vary across different channelers and cultural contexts? Is there a consistent underlying thread, or does it differ from culture to culture or time period to time period, for instance?
From what I understand, just going into some channelers, I know of Bashar, but there is another, I always forget her name. She channels a Palladian collective, and it's pretty much what I've noticed is that they use different terminology. But what I found fascinating is that what they're sharing is what a lot of near-death experiencers are also sharing after coming back about this universal oneness, Dolores Cannon hypnotherapy. That's also, I guess, I don't know if you want to call that channeling, but sometimes in a regression, the being or entity that took a person, like an abduction case, let's say, actually comes through the person as if the event is happening now, which falls in line with what near-death experiencers are saying, that everything is happening all at once, everything's happening right now. And if that's true, when someone's regressed into a session, the beings can communicate as if it's happening right now, even though the event may have happened like 5 years ago. So they can come through to answer questions. And they're also saying the same things that like Bashar is saying, that other channeler that I mentioned is saying about this disclosure about the oneness, the interconnectedness of all things, that death is an illusion. It's like waking up from a dream. Their near-death experiences are also sharing that reality is more like the base reality than this one is. This one's more like a physical dream that we're having. So there's that consistency. And the way my research works is just that I will hear some strange things, you are when you come into this stuff, but I follow patterns. So it's just kind of like an imaginary board in my head where you see like a red thread, and I start hearing all of the things about like what's starting to occur. For example, 360-degree vision, you're going to hear that a lot in NDEs. The We're All One, the life review, there's just this consistent pattern that keeps happening. And I personally think that they're getting us to this point where we're going to make this merge between spirituality and science, because I think that's when it's fully going to start changing up a lot of things. Like imagine hospitals having like Reiki and energy systems, or like the EE system, scalar wave technology type stuff that kind of taps into this other realm. But it seems to be that a lot of different sources are using their own terminology, but again, saying the same things. Law of One is another one. They use different terminology to Bashar, but they also say the same things. And I was going to bring that up, like the Bashar calls it the splitting of the prism, and Law of One, they call it the harvest. So there's like different, I guess it depends, because there's different beings coming through with different perspectives, but they seem to be sharing this same centralized message of oneness, connectedness. And sorry, go ahead, John.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just trying to
No, I
put
was
myself
done.
next in line, not to take over everything. But I just want to have a disclaimer out there about myself personally. I don't consider myself a channeler. I figure that I'm just a regular guy, just like a lot of other people, and I'm just trying to figure out existence. And any tips and hints and knowledge that I can gain from my intergalactic brothers and sisters is helpful for me on this journey. I think that I think that when they contact individuals, when there's contact, I I, I th- I feel that they understand our cultural differences. And so, like our religious differences, our cultural differences, at least in this stage of the game, although I don't see it personally as a game, in order to convey their messages and convey that universal consciousness, that awareness. And so, while one person may have one experience, James, I'm trying to address your
No, no, no,
question.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm listening. Totally intent. Yeah.
That while one person's experiences may differ from another's, you do kind of have those main central themes as far as love and creation themes and so on and so forth. I believe that there's a little bit of truth, at least a little bit of truth in everything from mythologies to current belief systems, and that we can, if we absorb as much of that knowledge, be able to you know discern what fits us individually. And that comes up to the whole aspect of what is reality. So my reality is going to be probably slightly different than Mr. Cameron's and then Christian, but it's where we find that commonality that can unite us.
Well,
Okay.
but so you're saying that there is going to be a common ontology that will be illuminated to us all, and we'll all
Yes.
be on board with it.
Right.
Because I'm
Right.
not
Well,
so certain. Like from based on my understanding, like I could see a Scientologist making this fit. We're all in a prison. I can see Christian making this fit. Like, and God forbid these beings become physical and present like a Jesus. Is that the Antichrist? Like it's like this is. I think I'm on
yeah.
Grant's side where like just wait. Like there could be a lot of conflict here. So
Oh,
what is the
there's
common
going to be.
ontology, and how do we get there?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of conflict. We're humans, and as far as our spiritual development, I don't even know if it's safe to say that we're infants. I mean, we haven't even been born yet. And so, I mean, there's a lot that we have to learn. Most definitely a lot that we have to learn. I know that the more I find out, the less I know.
Hey,
So,
guys.
Mr. Cameron,
I
oh,
hate
go
to
ahead,
butt
Pam.
in, but I've got a virtual meetup that I've got to jump
sorry.
off. I wish I'd come on earlier. If you guys do this again, I'd love to be part of it. This is my kind of conversation, consciousness, frequency, the world, love. Yeah.
Absolutely.
you, Pat.
But I do
We'll be
have a
in
virtual
touch.
meetup with a membership in literally 4 minutes. So
Okay.
thank you
Beautiful.
all.
Pleasure.
Nice to meet you, and I'd
Namaste.
love to be on again. Thanks.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Namaste.
And Mr. Cameron, looks like we got a new
A
person that
replacement.
joined us.
A replacement.
And Leslie, if you can go ahead and introduce yourself to Mr. Cameron and the group.
Hi, I'm Leslie. I'm a mod over at UAP Society Discord, and yeah, I just was excited to join. It was kind of last minute, but I'm here, and it's a pleasure to meet you and to be
Pleasure.
here discussing with you guys.
Beautiful. Have you got any wise words for us? Have you got a common message that you think is coming through?
Well, I don't know how far-fetched this is from what you guys were discussing previously, but I, believe that we are eternal spiritual beings having a very temporary human experience, and that
Right on.
we are love and we are light, even though that sounds really
It won't be so crazy in another couple months. Let me guarantee you. That's about the end. That's about.
I love
agree.
that.
That's
About the
ambitious,
end.
Mr. Cameron. What makes you say a couple of months?
Well, if you heard the interview I had with Steve Bassett, I mean, this whole Schumer amendment, Schumer has, according to Danny Sheehan this morning, said he's not backing off. This is going through. They are not going to change any wording in the amendment, and this will be signed by Biden. And I asked Steve Bassett, I said, why is the president not stepping up on this thing? This is the biggest issue. Why don't they grab this thing? If he's behind this thing, take control of this thing and take credit for this thing and become the president. And what's going to happen is this bill has to be signed by December 22nd. And even if they get the eminent domain pulled out or whatever they end up pulling out of here, I think that Lockheed is part of this disclosure thing. They went to Tom DeLonge in 2015. They were part of this whole thing. And so in December the 22nd, this National Defense Authorization act is going to be signed by Biden. He's going to have his like 10 or 12 little pens. You know, he writes one word, one letter with one pen, another pen, and hands out the pens. And there's people standing around. There's going to be like 50 reporters, and they're only going to ask one question, and it's going to be the UAP question. And the minute the president says, yeah, this is for real, we agree with this, we're going to work on this, we're going to expose this, it's game over, because that's what everybody's been waiting for. The first big move when all the young people came in was that I was started in 75 all the way up to 2017. I wrote an article. I said, there's absolutely no way this thing's ever going to get disclosed. There's no way. And then 2017, the New York Times did the story, and it was like the New York Times says it's real. And boom, it just exploded. Down the hill it went. The disclosure started. People started getting on board. It wasn't a toxic issue anymore. People could talk about it. Same as now, people could talk about consciousness. But that started. And now the Schumer amendment is what everybody else is waiting for now, is the president to stand up and say it's for real. When the president stands up and says it's for real, it's game over. I mean, it's going to go so fast, you're not even going to believe it. It's going to be viral. Even if you see on Twitter, I interviewed this Chris Sharp from Liberation Times. This young guy who talked about the story about the Republicans trying to block this disclosure thing and Schumer trying to push it through. And he did this article, almost 1 million people read it. If you take a look at the stuff on this UAP and you see the number of retweets, it's hundreds of thousands of people reading every post. This has gone totally viral. And once the president signs on the 22nd and he admits, yeah, this is for real, and we want to disclose this stuff, and we're going to do it between 2024, 2030, it's just going to take off because everybody's going to get on board. All the newspapers are going to get on board. Everybody's going to have it as a story. It's already started now. When you get a young kid in England writing an article and 1 million people read it, the times have changed. So I think in a couple of months, I think what the big surprise is going to be for everybody's into the technology, we're going to get the engine out of this thing. And then suddenly the Lakatsky, the guy from the big program, comes up and says, I've got authorization from the government to tell you that this UAP technology involves physical and psychic. And that's the big change, is that this psychic component, everybody wants the technology. We're going to have free energy and we're going to make weapons from this stuff. And that's not going to be the thing. It's going to be like, get your little suit and tie on. It's time to go back to church. This is going to turn out to be very, very much different than what I think people are waiting for. They're waiting for little aliens and engines and stuff like that. And it's this consciousness thing that's just going to blow people away. And they've actually admitted it. The head guy has actually already admitted the technology is got to do with physical and psychic. And that brings in the consciousness thing, which still, if you take a look at science, will now talk about UFOs. They still will not talk about consciousness. It's still a woo-woo. It's a toxic subject. We don't want to deal with it. That's the main the thing that I think that's going to change, is people are going to realize it has this sort of component where if you're talking about channeling and stuff, this is not crazy. This is probably part of this whole thing. That's, I think, and 22nd of this month, Biden will sign some sort of amendment, whether the whole thing's in there or whatever it is, but it basically says we are going to unravel the whole thing. We're going to tell the story, and it has a huge consciousness component to it.
Now,
Are we
Mr.
going to have
Cameron,
a
into the
common
group.
ontology? I'd ask that question to you, Grant. Like,
go ahead.
because that was my question. And I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name, and your name's
No,
not
it's all
on. It
good.
says We
It's
Are
all good.
Consciousness. But also for Grant, like, do you think we'll have a common ontology after Biden gets on a podium and says something?
I wrote a book called Contact Modalities, where I look at 70 different modalities. And so I say the most important people to talk to are people like you, people who are having the experience. Forget about the rational analytical scientists who've got an idea. Who cares? You get $1 and all your ideas, and you can't buy a cup of coffee. It's the people who are interacting with the intelligence. So what I did in Contact Modalities is the idea I have is, you take a look at UFO experiencers. If you look at this survey that was done by Edgar Mitchell, the free survey, 37% of UFO experiencers say they've had a near-death experience. 40% of UFO experiencers say at one point during their experience, they knew the answer to everything in the universe. 31% of all near-death experience people say at one point during their experience, they knew the answer to everything in the universe. I've had that experience 3 times. So my impression is everything is in the field. There is no time, there's no space, everything's in the field. And what you have is where there's channelers, near-death experience people, channel mediums and stuff. They're people that are able to shut down the rational analytical left brain, which is causing the signal and stopping us from picking up the signal. They're able to get in the field, get the message, and bring it back. So the one I've used is I've had the downloads through daydreaming, but I've used psychedelics. I've done 27 very high dose sessions with psychedelics. So I've been in the field and I've had these
Yes.
incidents. But I that's why I say you got to look at the people who are having the field. And I say the absolutely the number bottom line is the mystical thing that was in the East 5,000 years ago. You're starting to hear it now. Remember who you actually are. You are not the puppet on the stage. If you have a near-death experience, you float away and you look at your body, you realize the consciousness is not in the body. The body is in the consciousness. The consciousness is floating around. Oneness is absolutely, to me, the key message. And that's all evil is caused by the mistaken belief in separation. Oneness is a message. I remember a girl who helped me publish a number of my books. She's a channeler, and she uses a very weird method where this being came and she was practicing trying to shut down the left brain all night. And then suddenly this sparkly gray, and it's sparkly gray, you never told me. She said, I told you, you never listened to me. And this sparkly gray comes and puts his hand on her shoulder and says, here's what it feels like. And she could actually feel her brain going down into theta. And she does this thing where she asks questions and she types, and she's typing in the middle of the night. She doesn't know what she's typing, and she's just typing away. And she says, I just remember that every time they want oneness, they want to capitalize. So it's like oneness. It was like, so oneness is the main message, I think, that's behind this. You'll hear through all the channelers, through near-death experience, this idea that everything is one thing. There is no separation, and love is the core of the universe, the bottom of the universe. You hear these messages over and over again. And I will say that there is a lesson if you actually look deep into these, and all the people that I did with the contact modalities, whatever they were using, those were the main keys, I think. But I think there is a field where everything is in the field. And so I actually wrote a book called Inspired, where I looked at inventions, and I look at these people and you think, oh, they're just smart. They figure, no, they're in the field. Einstein, he had the dream of the toboggan. He says, I knew I had to understand that dream. In fact, you could say, and I would say, that my entire career was based on a meditation on that dream. And you realize there's people who can get in the field. Tesla, bring this stuff back. You're coming from psychedelics. Sometimes you can't bring it back because you're it's like a dream. It sort of fades away so fast. But that's why I'm so impressed with people who are that have these encounters. What was the message? It's like, what's the message you gave you? And you basically hear this concept of oneness, love, remember who you actually are, all this kind of stuff. The physical is an illusion. I think it's pretty common. And the Easterners had this 5,000 years ago, but we always thought they were stupid because they couldn't build a cell phone. Now we're realizing the Hindus and the Buddhists had this all figured out a long time ago, and it's going to be the same sort of impression they've got. Even the idea of Maya, the idea of illusion, that it's all an illusion. Consciousness creates matter. That's the quantum physics. So quantum physics is now picking it up, and you hear them. Consciousness is primary. Nothing gets below consciousness. And you hear these guys saying this. And I think it's all going in this direction, but it's science is hanging on for dear life because they just do not want to have any sort of religious interpretation. They want to be rational. They want to be, agnostic and stuff like that, and play this little game that, I'm not going to cross into the religious field and stuff like that. The religious field, the consciousness stuff is coming across whether they like it or not. And then I always said, the scientists are going to be the ones that are going to be like ready to commit suicide because the guy's going to go like, I spent $50,000 a year to go to MIT, and that's all bullshit. Are you kidding me? Like what? And that's
I gotta tell you, I think you might be channeling right now. It sounds like you just straight up channeled this information and you're just like spitting it out, which is awesome. And yes, across the board, I'm very much interested in channelers. Seth Speaks, I'm sure everybody's aware of that. So that really got me.
What about
it was a big part of my I don't know, I guess spiritual awakening process, but fascinating. And yes, the Eastern, they really knew this, and I don't think they were necessarily taking psychedelics. Granted, I'm all about plant medicine and going that route for anybody that wants to, but from my understanding, just through meditation, and if people practice meditation starting at a younger age, which is probably going to eventually happen, hopefully, but yeah, I think that's just a whole nother route, is the meditation. What would you say about that?
Yeah, well, the meditation, I'm kind of old to try to spend 20 years to learn. That's why I did psychedelics. I realized that
I'm
this was a
challenged
fast
with
way,
meditation
and
as
it was
well.
like getting on the roller coaster. And I realized, you get on the roller coaster, you're not getting off, But I go, oh, okay, and I'm just petrified every time I do it because I'm doing very high dose and it's very high emotion stuff. But when it comes to a challenge, I make a point that I have a challenge, $1,000 challenge. Anybody thinks they can fake a channeler? Oh, they're just making this stuff up. If you've ever listened to Paul Selleck, Paul
Oh, I
Selleck
love
has done
him.
12
Love him.
books, and 12 books, he's never changed more than 2 words. If you watch a channeler, a good channeler, what you'll see is that they don't, if you transcribe a YouTube interview, you'll see and they go down tangents and stuff. A channeler will never use and string stuff together. It's pure English. And Paul Selleck, so he'll do 12 books, and in each book, not more than 2 words are changed in a book. It's purely what he says. And the same thing, I was talking to people who are good friends with Bashar. I didn't realize this. The
Love
Bashar,
him.
when he channels, they say when you're sitting in the green room with him, he hacks and he coughs. He has this, like Paul Anka, he has this thing where he has to keep clearing his throat. And he said, as soon as you go into trance, that stops. And
Oh.
you see the same thing with him. He's not stringing, he's not stuff like that. So I say, if you think you can channel, let's sit you down for 40 minutes and let's see you go for 40 minutes and do what Paul Selleck does, where you whisper.
From my
repeat,
understanding,
whisper, repeat,
the champ they go through a process, you know, when they begin. So I mean, I think there's beginner channelers and there's
Yeah.
you know well-practiced channelers. So I think there is an acclimation of like. So I don't know. I'm not quick to question people, but I am very much, you know, using my intuition to discern, you know, what I'm hearing, I guess.
Yeah.
If I resonate or I don't.
You know,
So,
I'm
Grant, I have to
fascinated with
ask
all of
you-
it. Yeah, go ahead.
because I'm confident you've had interactions when Terrence McKenna was still alive, and like how do you view that as a cautionary tale, and how do you know when things are lying to you, right? Because there is an aspect to this, and again, that's kind of like my overarching thing is like, yes, I had this experience, and I couldn't explain to my wife why she was me and I was her, and she just couldn't understand it. But like at the same time, how do I even know that was real? Like that just could be a common thing the brain does, and the default mode network is because I have experienced several different kinds of things, and they can't all be true. So, like,
Okay.
using
if you
Terrence
talk-
as the
if you
example.
talk to somebody who has a near-death experience or a psychedelic experience or whatever, and when I had my download experience in 2012, February 26th, this one where it told me that this is all got to do with consciousness, it comes with absolute certainty. It's
Oh,
like
I agree with you.
know-
I've experienced it. I'm
Yeah,
with you.
ex-
George, can you
exactly.
fill in
But
the blank
so-
for me here
so-
and explain
so
why?
and it's more, they'll say it's more real than the real world. So if that's an illusion, then you're real. They'll come back when you come back into the dream. They'll say this is the dream, and that's what I discovered. So it's all plastic. So it's like when you go into, for example, Lakatsky has said that they did this study and they got all the data from all the UFO sightings, and what he stated was 200,000 UFO sightings in the data, the government database. Every single one is different. That changes everything. And then I
Yeah.
wrote a book on 36 people who claimed they've flown the craft. So you say, well, are they making it up? And like Ava Z asked this yesterday, and I go, when somebody you go and talk to somebody and they say they flew the craft, you go like, that's not something. If you're going to make up a UFO story, that's not something you're going to put in the story. You're not going to put in the story. I could see in 360 degrees. Or what people will say, the craft was 30 feet across. It went inside. It was the size of a football stadium. That's not something. And people are all saying the same thing. And they'll say it came with absolute certainty. That was the real thing. But when you get into that world, it becomes very plastic. It becomes, it's like you talked about this evil thing. If you take a look at the research that was done at Stanford University in the Lucid Dream Lab. So in the Lucid Dream Lab, they learned to get people into the lucid dream. And what they would do is one guy, they see his eyes moving back and forth. And they said, what were you dreaming about? He said, I was watching somebody play ping pong. So what they would teach these people, when you get into the lucid dream, they got them all wired up in with the electroencephalograph and stuff. They wire them and they say, move your eyes back and forth 4 times. And then the person goes and the person starts to sleep, and all of a sudden the eyes, you can see the eyes are moving back and forth, and they're giving the signal, I'm in the lucid dream. And what they say there is whatever you manifest is what happens. So he said, if you run into the evil alien or the devil or whatever it is, that's you creating this. It's all consciousness. Everything is happening in consciousness. Nothing can harm you in consciousness. So when you see the evil alien, and the psychedelic people say the same thing, you go to it. You do not run away. You go towards it.
Yes.
It's there for a reason. You give it a big hug and kiss, treat it with unconditional love, and that evil demon will turn into a positive being and give you a positive message. If you run away, you're reinforcing it. And that's what they'll say in psychedelics. The number one rule is be curious, Do not run away. Whatever you see, go towards it. And so I don't really believe in the good or evil. I believe it's all experience, and that we are part of the manifestation. That's the whole idea of Max Planck, the quantum physics thing. Consciousness is primary. Matter does not come into existence until there's an observer. We are creating consciousness. God did not create the heavens and the earth. God created the sparks of the divine, and we're the ones creating the universe, where it's all made out of consciousness. Or as Deepak Chopra says, everything is an activity inside consciousness. So yeah, it can be all very plastic, and if you could build a building in this world, you can build a building in the spirit world. If you commit suicide in the spirit world, you're going to create this thing where people are going to see ghosts and all this kind of stuff. You can create negative stuff, positive stuff, but we're the ones that are creating it, and it's all being built and looping into the system, and the universe is getting bigger, more elaborate, but we're the ones building it. There's no God out there who's doing stuff to us. We are the creators of the universe. That's the way I see it.
So
I
is that like a
love that.
scalable American gods kind of reality? Like our cumulative belief can then make the thing real? Like, oh, we can make Odin God if we wanted to, because if we just all really
Absolutely.
truly believe that.
If you take a look
An
at the beings,
Allegor.
the beings can do this kind of stuff where they can go through walls. They can do this, they can do that. They're just on a higher vibratory level. They understand better how the whole system works. We think it's matter, we think it's solid, we're making all sorts of illusions. What they told me, the number one message I got in my psychedelic stuff was, you think you got this you understand this, you haven't got an effing clue what's going on. And they told me this over and over again. And then at one point I said to this whatever it was, I said, well, come on, I'm just trying, you keep bugging me about this, my ego and all this kind of stuff. I said, well, you tell me what's going on. And then this whatever it was says, we don't know either. And I go, come on. And it was like they were talking at that level. And so there's these different levels. It's like we believe that there's spirits out there, there's God out there or whatever. And I say it's all the same thing. We're in the water, and we're at the bottom of the water in the dark. And from time to time, you get a channeler or somebody's had a near-death experience who's able to float higher in the water, and they get closer to the surface where the sun is, and they can see these fish. And then they go back down below, and they say to the fish, what level am I on? The fish goes, what level are you on? You're not on any level. You're in the water, you idiot. And it's all consciousness. You're in the water, and you float back down into the darkness, and then you tell people, oh, I had this experience, and say, well, maybe it's an illusion. Maybe, no, I was there. I know I saw these fish. And that's, to me, it's all vibratory. It's all that you get to God. And the original people said, what of my concept of God? My concept of God would be, it is consciousness that's not vibrating. You have people who do 5-methoxy DMT, this thing where they're at one with the light, and there's nothing. It's just this stillness. They're the love, and they're in this light. That's the whole idea. And the idea is in the Bible, it says God moved. So God moves, and the vibration starts, and as what the Hindus call, that's when the Maya starts. Anything that's vibrating is illusion, and it's different levels of illusion, physical, but it's all being created by consciousness. So we're creating it. It's just all different levels of vibration, and it's all God. And once God vibrates, it starts the consciousness. These different levels and different things start to manifest, and they understand how it works, so they can move into different levels. And as they told my Israeli experiencer friend, who wrote the book called One, same thing. It's like the message of one. And they said, when we come into your world, we take on a body. We don't need a body. We can take on whatever body we want. You can do the same thing. You just don't know it. Or another experiencer, Sherry Wild, who wrote a book called The Forgotten Promise, that she had agreed to come in and do this. And she tried to commit suicide 3 times. She was not very happy about this whole experience that she was having. And her being, she confronted him because he said he was from Andromeda, and then her editor said to her, Andromeda, how can he be from Andromeda? He said, you tell me he's a Zeta. She said, yeah, he's a Zeta. Well, then he's from Zeta Reticuli. He can't be from Andromeda. So she goes, okay, duh, what's the deal? Are you actually an alien? And he said, no, that would not best describe who I actually am. I'm an etheric being on a mission in the cosmos for the creator. And so that's the way I look at it. Like, everybody's playing these little roles, and they're doing this stuff. But everybody it's when you die and you levitate from your body and you leave, and then you realize that was a puppet. And I remind people the idea of remember who you are.
And then the time difference, it's like it was a flash, an instant, a blink of an eye, the life, and you almost don't even like attach yourself to the body when they die. They're like
there's no
almost
ego.
Their body.
And the
it's so it's
UFO stuff, if you
right.
take a look at Danny Sheehan and this latest UFO stuff, one of the whistleblowers is telling the same story that the sky pilot people told me about flying the craft, where the craft is alive. You touch the craft is conscious, you become one with the craft, whatever you think is what the craft does. They have people, and I've had a number of them say when they go into the craft, it's huge on the inside of the craft. So Danny Sheehan tells a story about the guy that was 30 feet across. He goes inside, it's the size of a football stadium. He becomes all disillusioned, he becomes dizzy, he can't figure what's going on. So he says, I got to leave the craft. He leaves the craft and he thinks he's been in there for 2 minutes. He's in there for 4 hours. And that's the whole thing. People in the experiences will say time and space disappears. So the question is there time and space? And if there's no time and space, how big is the universe? It's a singularity. We can believe that, there's a singularity, a mass singularity, the Big Bang, and this little thing comes out of nothing and all the matter comes out and stuff. But we can't believe there's a consciousness singularity that suddenly starts to vibrate and starts to move out, and this world is created out of consciousness. We say, no, we can believe the matter one, but we can't believe the consciousness one. I just say it's a singularity. There may be no time and space, because if you take a look at remote viewers, they're not going anywhere. They're not saying, like, when they go remote, say, hang on, I'm flying there, I'll be there in a minute. No, they go, I'm at the target. You give them the number, they're at the target. It's inside themselves. Out-of-body experience will say the same thing. You go within to go without. You go within, everything is inside you. The field is inside you. Or
as above, so below, as within, so without.
Yeah, microcosm.
The intellectual
macro to micro. Wait, I wanna say something, because it's something that's on my radar, and I'm researching a lot right now, because we have an interview coming up surrounding this, but is the human design, which was also channeled by somebody named, I can't think of his name right now, but it's something like Hugh Unu Ra. No, it's Ra Unu Hugh. I might be butchering that.
Cool.
But I'm just now learning
cool.
about it, and I'm very much deep in the trenches. But so I don't know if you're familiar with that, but and I've learned that I am a projector. So if anybody's familiar, I don't know, it's a little daunting, and it's like, wow, and there's a lot of validation happening for me surrounding this. But so yeah, I'm gonna be diving a lot deeper into that channeled information, which seems like a blueprint for each of us, and basically it's saying, like, we have crystals within us, and we're each had different facets in these crystals, and there's just the information, surrounding us, and it's going through us, and we're filtering this, and our crystals within us, are basically, we're translating the information in different ways, and so we're all, like, super important, obviously, and so I don't know, that's one thing. But the other thing I wanted to mention is, yes, we are mentally, with our beliefs and mindset, we create what we see on the other side. But I believe it happens here too. It's just at a very much slower pace. Mm-hmm. And, like, the more high frequency you can be in, you can literally interact with the universe. I mean, I see synchronicities all the time, because I'm literally, like, just attached and, like, connected and, like, excited because of, I guess, the expansion of my consciousness, basically. I just want to say all that. I had a lot to say there.
Yeah.
Well, we talk about crystals in us. I mean, the pineal gland has crystals in it. So, I mean, if anybody doubts that we have these crystals in us.
It may have sounded, and I could be wrong, that each of our chakras, like the whole system, basically has these interactive points where I don't know, maybe I read too far into that, but yeah, for sure.
But as far as Kuo goes, and LNL research, which fan of that got me into it. I've told Christian this before, that in the years past, like I said, I grew up believing it was, again, almost inherent that we weren't the only life in the universe, and that there was this big, huge metaphysical, at that point in time, that I was thinking of, universe that surrounded us. And there were a lot of mysteries that we just had no clue of. And I didn't really start understanding consciousness until I started getting into the Law of One and the raw material. And that opened my mind, because I used to think that channeling was, I believed in UFOs and extraterrestrials, but I didn't really believe in channeling. It was just nothing that I had really truly exposed myself to. But maybe there were times that I saw a charlatan, and I just thought, okay, this just isn't, it's just, I don't believe in it. And then I got into the Law of One, stumbled upon it, and really started listening to the audio from the sessions, and then just started reading more of the material, and it opened my mind. And it wasn't until that point to where I started experiencing my own versions again with the dowsing rods, or what I like to call the channeling rods, and the spirit box, and the contact that I've had with M and the other entities, and everything just kind of opened up. Now I know that there's a lot that I still, this
There's
lifetime, I'm not
something
going to be able to learn
going where
everything.
more and more people are opening up. I mean, I'm
Yes.
seeing this
Yes.
clearly in just in 2 years of my like deep dive into this whole, you know, I'm kind of on top of it, I guess, as far as like seeing who's doing what. And
Mm.
and I'm hearing through the channelers that are, you know, like you know, Bashar, or you know, the obvious ones that are doing, that are putting themselves out there and have been for years and decades, basically. But so they are pretty much saying the same thing. There is
Mhm.
something happening, and yes, and just like what Grant was saying about
Mhm.
in the next, you know, year, 2 years, like there's something coming. And that's another part of the whole like HD thing, is that supposedly the projectors are some, I don't know. So yes, I've been a heretic and like yelling things from the rooftop. Like before spirituality, I was like conspiracy like girl, you know, like hello, like people, and nobody wants to hear me. And so like, I'm just feeling really validated with the whole HD thing, and I'm like, okay, let's do this. I'm gonna learn how to like work myself the way I'm supposed to, you know.
Yes, and the first part for me, I'm just can only speak about my own personal experiences thus far, is none of this came truly to my awareness until I opened myself up to such things. And that is that's where a lot of people are hitting these roadblocks, because they've been
Yeah,
taught, like their parents have been taught,
it's
and
the
their parents were taught.
deprogramming part. Yeah.
Yes. And they don't honestly know any better. And it's not to make an excuse out of it or anything, but it's kind of like, when are we responsible for our actions, which I know is a big topic in the spiritual community as well. Well, kind of maybe not big, but underlying the surface is, when are we responsible for our actions? Is that when we're born? Is that when we're in our womb? Is that at 18? And it's just kind of comes to a point in time where um you have to take responsibility for your actions. You have to open yourself up to these possibilities. I you know, I always hear people, skeptics, saying, well, show me the proof. I want physical proof. You know, and they march and they beat that drum. And I'm thinking to myself, there's proof everywhere. It doesn't take that long to look for it. I mean, heck, look online for 5 minutes. I mean, because to me, what some people are recording and people's experiences is proof enough to me. Like Mr. Cameron was talking about these experiences that these people have had on craft. I don't know any of those names that he mentioned, but I've had my own experience. I don't think I was physically driving a craft, but I've been in a craft. I have seen that same, not specifically same, but that description I gave to Daniel the other day about how big that room was that I was in. Okay. And in that craft, I didn't know about any of these other things where it was like, oh, it's the size of a football field, but yet on the outside it was this big. You know, I didn't hear any of that stuff, but I experienced that through my travel, I guess you could say. I still don't really know if I had gone through the ethereal, which is what the entities are telling me, that they visit us in the house and through the dreams. I'm still trying to figure a lot of this stuff out. But regardless, I was able to spend a short period of time on that craft, not physically.
Now,
And
Daniel,
with,
I'd like to hear your thoughts on
sorry.
this.
Yeah, so I actually wanted to. So James, you had kind of. I wanted to approach some of your question about your negative experiences, and I've had similar things. So my background, I came was Christian Baptist. I had a lot of hell, fire, and brimstone type perspective on things. Um, so as I came out of my dogma of the church and I left it, I had a lot of fear and like that kind of resided of having these kind of spiritual experiences. And I had done remote viewing, obviously I've done the various things, but in my mind I was still very much like my guard was up, right? And that was something that that took me a while to process and actually unpack, because according to me, there was all these demons, all these things out there, in the astral, having all this, like, this was my perspective, and there was always resistance when it came to, astral travel or other things like that. And then as I slowly started to not listen to the fear, but listen to that internal, like that deep sense of like direction, I was like, there's something about this I need to work on. So I had heard about a story about it was a few remote viewers that were in the Stargate program. They were told to go to essentially the Galactic Federation's home planet, whatever. So they did so. They went to this holy city. It was like a giant pyramid. And he went into it. And by the way, the few remote viewers, because they would usually do these in teams, they drew the same city, the same pyramid, the same layout, where the landscapes were, everything like that. It matched up very well. But the one gentleman, he went into this like holy area, like, and it was like this pyramid temple, and there's beings are like worshiping like the one, the one consciousness. Goes in, lays on the table, and he's like, I felt so much at home or at peace, or like, he's like, I felt like I belonged there. I mean, it felt very he's like, it felt very familiar. And so I felt connected to that. I was like, that would be awesome. Experience that, but I'm not really sure about this whole NHI alien thing, because it's really scary. This was, back in 2018, 2019, I think. So I was like, I'm going to project myself to a different planet. Let's just try it. And again, you can't verify it, obviously, because you don't have other people, unless you have other remote viewers going there and you're correlating data, and you can eventually prove it. It's all hearsay. But I went to try to go to this planet that I felt drawn to. And then because I was afraid, I instantly got thrown back in my body, and I could not go back. Like, I was like stonewalled. They're like, you don't bring that here. So it took me a few weeks to kind of readjust that. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to go in with any intention. I'm just going to be kind of love giving. Like, I'm just going to kind of go in with this perception. And then I was able to go there. I was in a city, vines hanging down. It was a huge waterfall. I was a woman there, and she told me to come sit down, and she was human looking. This could have been just perception, but she felt like best way I can describe it, she felt like a mother that I'd forgotten about. She, like a distant family that it was like a kinship, and I don't know how else to describe it. But that was kind of the thing that started me on the path of interacting with NHIs. And I wouldn't have gotten there if I hadn't let go of that fear of the unknown, the fear of like evil and different things like that. And I think after going through those experiences, I've realized for myself, it very much is about what you're putting out, because it is ultimately a reflection of an internal, because you are consciousness. You are like, we're all consciousness. So we're perceiving, we're also attracting, and there's also a push and pull when it comes to them as well. I think that it's since we're all manifestations of consciousness of the universe, we are reflecting and deflecting like each other's perceptions and connections and everything else. And that's why we experience synchronicities. We experience your brother calls, and you're like, they call you like, a minute before you're like, oh, I think they're going to call, a remote viewing, astral, whatever you want to call it. That's kind of how we're getting these data, information, these connecting forces. These are all interacting with us because we're non-local. And I think when it comes down to it, that is the best description that we have for what this is. And it just lines up with my own experience, but I know also, as I've been able to interact with more and more people, that tends to be the case about this being the reality of things.
Yeah. So the only thing I would say to that is, I'm talking in code. Part of it is I don't want to broadcast people being irresponsible. When you talk about fear and like exploring the unknown, George can at least nod his head and say that I don't have any fear in exploring the unknown. But my problem with that is that, like, you gave the example of your childhood, and I grew up in a similar background. more evangelical than specific denomination. But you know, so like 2005, 6-ish, I would say, you know what? Yeah, like these Christian generals, they're being prudes. They don't understand anything. Like they just like, okay, they see the spiritual, they immediately they think, oh yes, it's going to be the end times, the Antichrist, your demons, leave them alone. I get that. They're being prude. You know, but I would say now, and like to make it brief, in 2023, I'm like, holy shit, maybe we should be listening to the Christian generals. and that's not because I would say like, oh, Christians around me or any denomination has it right. In fact, like I'm more alarmed that I can't turn around and say, oh, you know what? I finally got it. And these guys have it right. The Mormons, like, I don't think the Mormons have it right. I don't think anybody has it right. But
No.
like it's like that South Park scene, right? When he goes to hell, you know, like it makes me more concerned that the Christian generals could be right. And I can't point to a Christian faction, right? Like, so like I'm left in a point where, okay, you're having these experiences at NHI. I don't trust them. Like before, when I was saying Terence McKenna, it wasn't because, oh, I don't believe Terence McKenna was engaging with the phenomenon. The phenomenon's not real. It's like, well, clearly he was being lied to. Like we have to like look at that and say, well, how big could the lie be? Could we have this? Could the pantheism thing just be like a constant beacon that's on a lie? Like we're trying to confuse you with pantheists because we're trying to take you away from this monotheistic God. Is the monotheistic God of some kind of like illusion? Like you're just caught in like the Russian doll thing. So like I would say like I've almost gone like too far the other direction. Like, oh shit, I'm so confused. Like, I don't even know where to begin to make reality of this. I don't even know that I exist, much
That's
less
on
you.
purpose.
You know, like forget
That's on
Descartes.
purpose.
Like, I'm going before him. You know.
Okay, let me make a point about this, because if you haven't seen the interview with James Lukatsky, who ran the program for the government, and George Knapp and Corbell, you got to watch it, because this guy basically tells exactly what they've got. What's going to, as I said, it's going to change December 22nd, because in December 22nd, it's
I do
no
believe that,
longer
yeah.
going to be, you haven't got the physical proof. You're just imagining all this crap. We're scientists. We've got the physical proof, and there's none of this bullshit going on, or stuff like that. They're going to say, number one, crafts are real. We've got bodies. Psychic phenomena is part of this thing. There are men in black. This has all been admitted on the record. Pentagon reviewed the book. The book was approved, and he basically asked him, have you got permission from the government to say this? So it's going to be, the whole thing is, it is all true. What these people are saying is all true. Then it goes, but it's no longer going to be where we have to defend as to what's real, what's not real, that this is all illusion or whatever. A lot of this stuff has been established. And when they asked Lukatsky about the fear thing, about this being a demonic thing, he said, no, he says, he's got all the facts. And he said, no, he said, I may be prejudiced by my Roman Catholic religion, but no, I'm very positive about what I see. And that's
I saw that. That didn't leave me comfort, because like I don't think like, and I don't know how much of a practicing Catholic Lukatsky is, but from the outside, and this is just, and he can correct me, I was just like, okay, he corrected me. Like, he seems like he's maybe a passively practicing Catholic. So a passively practicing Catholic who has a very different set of beliefs than like an evangelical or a Baptist.
But
like, I don't trust Jim Lukatsky to be the spokesperson for all Christians worldwide. Like,
no, but he's no longer
that makes me more scared, actually. You know,
he's talking about what they've actually discovered, what's going to be coming after December 22nd. Now we can say, oh, there's nothing there. It's all, they don't have any evidence. He's basically saying, yeah, get ready. We got the evidence. We got the bodies.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything to me, because if we don't have the common ontological grounding for it, then like you said, there's going to be conflict. Like the Nation of Islam is going to stand up and be like, here comes our mothership. You know, like, it's going to kill all the white men. Like, well, yeah, do we want to have that conversation? Like,
but everybody has. When are we going to stop living in fear? When are we going to stop living in fear? Fear is the biggest control mechanism.
I'm not the one who talked about the wheel that's going to kill all the white men, right? Like, so, like,
no,
this is the reality. Like that people need to understand that Nation of Islam is a UFO religion that is cool Scientology, and a lot of this cosmology can fit well with their ontological worldview. Well, like, so maybe we should have a conversation about maybe getting on the same page before maybe a wheel shows up.
Well, nobody's going to get
right.
Nobody's going to get on the same page. Everybody's got their thing. So the U.S. military is going to paint that's why they went to the Armed Services and Intelligence Committee, because they're trying to sell this thing as an evil force. We need some money, and if it's not evil,
do we know it's not?
Any money.
Do we know it's not?
Security threat.
Do we know it's not?
Well, yeah, but they would have killed us a long time ago if they had. I mean,
I don't think that's true.
Hey! They would have killed us a long time ago if they were. But you know what?
I don't know what they would be doing. To be honest, I'm going to put that out there.
Well, that's the whole thing. But I mean,
the fear is going to create we each have our own experience, and that's what I think people are starting to realize
Yeah.
is,
And
they
that's
are
bringing up
creators in themselves. We're each creators, and
that's bringing
we
up
create
what
thoughts and our focus and intentions
yeah,
and
like with
feelings.
what
So shit.
Leslie is saying is I agree, and that's what I was going to bring up earlier, but I know we were trying to talk about other things also, is that one of the things that channelers and near-death experiencers have come back with and they share is that we do create our own reality, but the law of one, Ra calls it the harvest, and Bashar calls it the splitting of the prism. That as our frequency raises, our awareness raises, that we're getting to a point now where that there's going to be, and I was going to ask you guys how you felt about this, but there's going to be some kind of like deviation because everything exists. So even if you can imagine some kind of negative force or whatever it is taking, like you can't, as something that of creation, you can't imagine anything that doesn't exist. You because you're something that exists. So it's like try to imagine right now something that doesn't exist. You can't, like, because if you can describe it, if you can articulate it in any kind of fashion or form, it does exist. But Bashar says that's okay. I mean, it's your journey. What do you choose to align with? Because it's like whatever you prefer or whatever beliefs within yourself that you hold and put attention to, it's a center of focus. So you will attract yourself to that stuff. I don't know how it's supposed to look if this is true, if there's actually a splitting where people who are on a lower vibrational like wavelength going into another direction, what that's supposed to look like. My theory is that it might be something akin to like the Mandela effect, where you have a group of people that remember something happening a certain way, and you have another group that don't, and it seems like there's supposed to be some splitting off. Somebody did actually ask Bashar, well, what is that supposed to look like to me though? Like, do portals just open up and then we just walk into a different reality, or everyone gets left behind, or how does it like? And he says, whatever it takes for your belief system to understand it. And what I found very interesting was that in Dolores Cannon's book, under hypnotherapy, the same question was brought up, and it was told that because everything exists and there are parallel realities, and it goes on and on and on from one person's perspective. Let's say like you know how you brought up your concerns, James. From your perspective, all of us may die, and then you'll go into a reality that fits your whatever your beliefs are. There's nothing wrong with that because we're all
There's
eternal.
got to be a reality at the end of the day, right? Like kind of has to be. There has to be a underlying reality. Like there has to be.
It's
And that-
Even if we are the underlying
are a
reality, that is the
part
reality.
of
Like when we
oneness.
die, we
Yeah.
either light switch goes off or we continue on
What-
somewhere else. There is a reality at some point, right?
There's no point to it though, because regardless of what the outcome is, when your body dies, your physical body dies. There's not absolutely one person here in this channel that can stop that. And so once we come into
might only
that
be one person here.
realization, there might only be one person here. I am talking to myself. That's the
Exactly.
universal consciousness. I am talking to myself, and my consciousness can disagree with itself. But that's besides the fact is that once our physical form dies, I'm not going to be able to stop it. So where we go from there is dependent upon your belief system. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe not.
I don't
Maybe
think
you'll
we
come
get to
to a
choose.
realization once you die. Maybe you get the realization once you die that you are reincarnated. Maybe you can reincarnate as to whatever you want. Maybe you're just going to be back as a human. These are all answers that we don't have currently. And
Well,
so
even we get the choice is a reality, right? Like, so there's a reality. We get a choice. Okay,
Well,
that's the
sure.
reality. But like,
Sure. Well,
we don't, like, what is the reality? We have to
Each
figure that
choice
out.
is actually switching and changing your timeline. So I think that's what's happening with the shift or the people
Right.
going from, what you might call 5D or 3D or whatever,
Mhm.
the split that, it's really like bringing, the higher frequencies and dimensions down here to earth. And like, it's, we can have heaven on earth. And I'm feeling that more than anything, that it's not some sort of like crazy like split. And I'm hearing this from, channelers and
Yeah.
stuff. So it's from information I'm gathering, but is yeah, that. And I don't know from what would happen after, but what I'm thinking is what so many people, are in the flow of the raising of the consciousness, like others are going to eventually join in and things are just going to change like for the better,
Right.
because everybody's
It's
going to
going into the
realize who
fourth
and what they
density.
are, and we're going to be more cohesive with each other and more loving, which is, you know, our natural.
I think
guess
love
what
is the
we,
answer,
we
right?
agree.
Yeah.
Apparently, with the NDEs, we agreed to come here to this dualistic, you know, place, separate, and it's, you know, Earth School apparently, and I tend to resonate with that, and it's just an experience, and that we shouldn't really stress too much over everything. I mean, obviously, you know, you want to stand up for rights and things like that, and that's coming from a place of love. But when it comes from fear and, you know, anything else is really not a good vibration or frequency. And
But fear is not
and
always a bad thing. Why does
the
fear
way
have
we
to be a
think
bad thing,
about things
right?
could change. We could change
It's
our
how-
thought process.
It's how fear is used. It's a control mechanism that you see across Earth every day. We do it to ourselves. Fear is one of the most destructive feelings. Yeah, you have fight or flight. If you're like, if a bear comes to me, okay, I'm gonna be like, whoa, bear. Okay, I'm gonna be, you know, should I lay on the ground like I'm dead, or should I try to run for it? So yeah, fear is it's healthy, but when it's used to oppress and control, when it's used to do that, which is through, you know, certain religious dogmas, which is through your government. You know, I think that a lot of skeptics, this is just my opinion, that a lot of skeptics, they deny it because they're afraid. They've never dealt with that monster under the bed or in the closet, and confronted it as not being such. So when these things that are you know, these entities are making contact, and there's a lot of the UFO kind of stuff, they automatically dismiss it, not because they don't believe, not because science really hasn't proven it as a fact, is because they're still afraid of it. They're afraid of the unknown, which is one
But
of
you
the
have to
greatest
fear
fears
something.
that we
Something
have.
has to have authority, right?
No. Why?
No.
Why does something have to have authority?
Well, Zeus,
I have authority
this is
over
the philosophical
myself.
argument. Like, why did the Greek pantheon, why did Zeus become monotheistic over time? It's because the argument is, well, even Zeus's consort is going to be subject to Zeus in some sense. So you could say that, like in your bear analogy, oh, I fear that bear because that bear can end me under certain circumstances, so I'm going to respect that bear. So even Zeus's consort, to an extent, will fear Zeus. And even like my background, the way I talked about my childhood, I could say, well, you know, like in Christianity, they say, you know, fear of God is the beginning of all wisdom, right? So it's almost ubiquitous that, like, you kind of have to fear. You have to choose what you're going to fear and respect, right? We are not.
I was born
That's
Catholic.
issue, right?
Humanity has evolved, and it's over, you know, time or whatever that we're experiencing here, and you know, basically, we had to have these instincts at one point, you know, but we are evolving consciously, and it's a constant. I mean, it's not just happening now, it's definitely happened throughout our time, you know, here on Earth. And so basically, it's learning to, I think it's about learning to master and understand ourselves and who we truly are. And I think what came to mind actually was the ages, the golden ages. There was the Iron Age, you know, there's the different ages, and we are in a cycle. And I feel like everything is an ebb and flow. The universe, God, source, or whatever, you know, and we're just coming to end of a cycle, which is bringing us back to, I guess, the golden age, maybe. And it's about the connection to spirit or to source that is strengthened at this time, if that makes sense. Like, we were further away at another point in time. Would you agree with that thought process?
I don't know. I have a problem with the vibration thing, not because I think it's necessarily wrong, but because I don't know that it's right. I like the whole CE5 structure that you guys have. I'm not opposed to it because I'm like, oh, I find this offensive. I'm just like, well, I've actually experienced part of this, and I like it, but you know, I go back to Terence McKenna because that's the common thing we have. Like, oh, Terence McKenna was wrong, right? So you can be wrong here on a big scale in a big way, right? So I'm just fearful, which I guess makes me a low vibration person.
Like
And
Mr.
whatever
Cameron.
whatever you
Sorry?
take into the experience is what you get. I mean, John Wheeler, who was the intellectual successor to Einstein at Princeton, said clearly, there is no out there. It's a participatory universe. So I would say there's nothing doing anything to us. We are creating, and he even did the delayed choice experiment where he changed the past. So we can change whatever we want. And with the fear thing, if you want to see how it works, if you get into a plastic environment, get into a high dose psilocybin thing and take fear.
Oh, I've
in,
been
you
there.
better
I
have
might
your
have been
seatbelt.
higher than you. This is the thing I wanted to talk about being responsible. And this is why George, I think, invited me on here with 10 seconds notice. I'm pretty actually competent now. You're not talking to somebody who's inexperienced here. You're not...
Yeah,
Well,
no,
I
but I'm
take-
saying, I mean, that's my
Yeah,
clear
psychedelics as well.
day, and that's what they warn you about. If you take fear into it, you're going to create a very negative thing.
Oh yeah,
that's
I
gonna-
understand that. Very
gonna
like I've had
manifest
that
what you're-
experience. I've had the
So
opposite.
there
I
is
can
no out
control it.
there
You
out
know what
there.
I'm trying to
There's
say?
no
I'm
evil
experienced.
demons chasing us. There's no evil. Even Sheehan put the thing. You know, we got the evil Russians and the Chinese. We got to remember, we had the first atomic bomb. Then they had to build an atomic bomb because we built an atomic bomb. Then we built a hydrogen bomb. Then they got to build an atomic bomb, a hydrogen bomb. And now we're looking to get these super high speed rockets that give you 30 seconds warning, and you can't defend it. And we just keep accelerating and accelerating. And if you're in the fear thing of the military, well, if you're a hammer, everything's a nail. And it's whatever you manifest. And in the end, if you
I'm more
take a look
afraid
at
of
the
us.
experiences that were given, I did an interview with somebody who had a near-death experience, somebody who was in a float tank, somebody who was just meditating, and psilocybin. And the primary story is told by Nick Cook's wife. Nick Cook wrote the book Hunt for Zero Point, the whole thing about what kind of technology does the government have in terms of UFOs. And he has his wife with the experience, and all the other people had exactly the same experience. She's holding her mother's hand. Her mother dies. She gets up and says, everything's perfect, and walks out of the room. And he goes, what the hell are you talking about? Everything's perfect. And so he goes to her a couple hours later and says, what were you talking about? Everything's perfect. Your mother just died. And she said, weren't you there? And he said, no, I wasn't there. What do you mean? Well, I was in this field. I knew the answer to everything. I couldn't bring it back. I knew the answer to everything, and everything's perfect. Everything's exactly the way it's supposed to be. I interviewed a woman who went off a motorcycle face first into a concrete near-death experience. She had my friend who's a big trader in LA had the experience, and I made it public and said, I didn't even tell my wife. I was so embarrassed. It made no sense whatsoever, that everything was absolutely perfect. And there's this absolute sense of certainty over these different things. That's one pattern, is this idea. Everything's exactly the way it's supposed to be. There is no, bad or good. You do what even Bashar says, whatever you do is what you do. And you build your own little world. And it can be, if you say you don't brush your teeth for 20 years, well, then you're going to have a little bit worse experience eating in 20 years. You're manifesting what you're doing, and there's no good thing to do, one bad thing to do. You just do what you do, and everybody's doing their thing. And it's like a movie. If you go into a movie where everybody says, I love you, it's great, I love you, I love you, I love you, God gets up with his popcorn and says, this is bullshit, and goes to the next room, and it's like up and down, and it's like, all this sort of stuff. That's the way the world is.
It is important to make good choices for good. You don't want to like go around hurting others. This is important. And from my understanding actually, I'm very obsessed with near-death experiences, and I've probably seen 500 to 800 different accounts of near-death experiences. I'm like my own researcher and for my own whatever it is that I'm doing. But yes, like these people are, when it comes to them being, I guess, where the judging might come in, it's not at all like you're being judged. You're literally looking at your life review, and you're seeing every single thing. You're reliving it from the person's perspective that you're interacting with. Like you are fully engaged in how you felt, they felt, of each interaction of your whole life. And you do kind of beat your own self up. You're the one being like, oh man, look what I did, because even the smallest little thing that they could have been not very nice to this person, but that rippled, and that person that they hurt went and hurt somebody else. And then that person, and it might have got bigger to where somebody actually got killed way down the line. Who knows? But there's ripples, and we are creating them. And so it's super important that we're coming from a place of love and realize who and what we are, and that we need to love each other, because if everybody just did that, then I think that's probably happening. That's probably
I hope you're right. I think you're right, and I hope you're right. The love is the key thing, right? Love, like that I think is the thing.
But in the near-death experience, if you studied Newton, the near-death experience, the 7,000 people that he had that went in front of the council between 3 and 12, everything was experienced. It was not like, oh, why did that person do something to me that said, oh, he tells the one story about the guy, in one lifetime he's made to walk the plank, and in the next lifetime he saves the person, is his daughter, he saves him from drowning.
Yeah,
and it's all experience. So you choose to die.
The bad guy.
So if you come in and you choose to die, you would say that's an evil thing. oh, somebody killed me. And then when you see it in the afterlife, you say, oh, that was pretty interesting. I never died.
Yeah.
Like that. It's like,
It's
it's
like
all,
a play.
everything's
We're
experience.
just
where
like
we
in
wanna-
this big play.
We want to
Yeah.
play ourselves as the good guys and everybody else as bad guys. That gives us the justification of separation, which is the main thing. It's oneness or
Yeah.
separation. If we can do separation, then I can steal your stuff. I can kill you. I can do whatever I want because we're separate and I'm above you and you're below me. If we're all one thing, and then you realize whatever you do. So the system is moving in one direction or it's moving in the other direction.
We are
depending on what you do.
evolving. It's like evolving on not just humanity, but as our spiritual beings are evolving. I think that there is an evolving process going on
Yeah.
the bigger picture.
And even
Unless
and
the
even
world
if we
ends in
just-
2027.
well, exactly. Even if the world,
Like we're being so positive here, but yet like we're ignoring
even if the
the
world-
wheel
if
from
we
the
destroy the
Nation
world-
of Islam. 2027, the world ends. Like what like
Hey, but
Okay,
guess what?
so
If the world ends in
I've-
2027, we're energy and we're just going to be created somewhere else. And
exactly.
that's-
So people say that's evil if you destroy the world. No,
Maybe.
it's just an experience, and you're going to go somewhere else, and you keep running the play till you get it right.
guys,
that's right.
IGNO, like I know, right? But at the same time, I'm saying there's got to be some kind of reality back there that's real. Like
No.
it's like
Oh, there's
Why
no
isn't
out
that
there,
reality?
Something
no
came
out
from
there,
somewhere.
out there.
It is.
There's
It
no
is
out
real.
there, out
That
there.
is reality. That is reality. What do you mean? There's got to be there's got to be some reality out there. What's your definition of reality? Let's just say that's not reality. To
I
me,
don't get to
that's
decide.
reality.
And
Well,
but like
there
you
you
guys
go,
are
but
saying, I
To
do get to
me,
decide.
that's
right?
reality. Well, yeah, you get to decide. If
Me
you don't
personally?
accept my reality, if you don't accept my reality, then that's the reality that you have to live with. I accept my
But we're
reality.
here on this
that's
earth.
my
Like this
reality
earth
that I have to
exists,
accept it.
right?
Yes, this earth, everything exists in the universe. And I wanted to ask Leslie this. Okay, when it comes down to our personal experiences, what I believe is that all of creation, the universe is trying to learn from itself or about itself. Okay, so as being an incarnation created, at least in this lifetime, as a human by the universe. Okay, the universe is trying to learn from my experiences. All right. So do you believe in returning back to the source eventually?
Ooh, that's a
Leslie.
very good question. So like I talk to Christian pastors and go like, so what do you think? Do you think there's room in Christianity for reincarnation? So like the God's honest says, I don't know, but I'm willing to explore every single avenue to the answer to this question, to like the craziest ends. So
That's partly
I'd
what
love to
took
hear
me
your
by
view on
mine.
it. You know,
Leslie, what do you feel about that? If you don't mind me asking.
What was the question? Do I
If
do we
if
do I
you believe
think
that
we
our-
refer- God or
Yes,
source?
if
Yes.
eventually, yes. Okay.
Mhm.
So is that
If we want,
know,
I
it's-
mean, I don't know. That might be that's up in the air too. I don't know. I feel like it can be. Yeah, like we literally do experience on the other side, from what I understand. You know, however we need to best work for our souls or spirit. You know, to handle the situation. I don't know. I don't know. I don't. You
right,
know,
I think that all
there-
of our quest is
there's a lot of mixed stuff. So of course we don't know anything until we're fully there. So we only have like to an extent of what we understand from other people's experiences. But
Can I
this
answer
is a
that
very
question?
Western lens view of Eastern philosophy. And what about like Islam? Is like, oh, these are all jinn. So these are all things that are fallen creatures that are there to like take us down and drag us down away from the will of God, right? So like, do we need to consider that view, right?
Yeah,
I
sure.
feel like it's very possible that ET, angels, all of it, all the names across all of the different, you know, countries and parts of the world, and whatever their culture believes or whatever, like it's all still belief, and it's all the same thing, and it's all talking about the same thing, just in different ways, and the way they're believed, and then how they're programmed through the generations of that culture and of that area. And
Yeah.
I think that we agree to partake in certain areas
Yeah.
for purposes.
Von
before we
I
even
think
Manas.
the NH
And
I
then
think the
it's
Manas,
not
yes,
NHIs
from my
the
understanding.
NHIs are still trying to reach source themselves. They don't know all the answers as well. They're learning. You never stop learning.
We don't know
So
that they don't
we're
know
not
that, right?
huh?
They might be lying to us about everything. This might be
No,
their
they
realm.
don't.
They could just control
I-
it, and they're just
Can-
sitting
can
there
I,
playing with
let
us.
me-
Look what we're making them think. You know, like we have
Go ahead,
no
Mr.
idea.
Cameron. Sorry.
I just
go
want to
ahead.
make a
Mr. Cameron,
comment on
please.
this, returning to source, because I've had a lot of discussions with people about this idea that the beings are trying to return to source. The being Da said, I'm on a mission in the cosmos for the creator. People will say to me, I'm going to get off the karmic wheel. I said, seriously? like you're gonna what? You're gonna sit on the beach in Hawaii and drink Mai Tais? How many billion years do you think you can do that? I don't think the idea is to return to source. That's a Western idea. Oh, we're gonna get utopia and we're gonna live happily forever. And so I'd say like you're gonna get to source, and then like your kid or your grandkid is in trouble, or what? You're not gonna go back and help. The whole idea is experience. This, you keep going back until everybody's saved. And it's like, we got to save myself. I'm getting off the karmic wheel. I'm gonna go back to source and I'm gonna live in utopia. And it's, to me, it's all experience. It's the idea that we have this end thing, that we're going to get our big house and our 2 cars, and our kids are going to go through university,
Heaven.
and then we're going to get some spiritual, and we're going to go to heaven, and we're going to live happily forever ever after. And who cares about the people that are suffering on the other side of the world? It's about saving me. I think it's about experience, going through or coming back. And to me, it's like, I'm ready to come back immediately, because that's the whole idea, is its experience, and it's making the whole thing, the universe is just getting bigger and more elaborate. It's not about, at some point everything goes back to source. It's about the universe gets more grand, more magnificent, and we're all building it. And I think we're just going to continue to build it. The idea that we're going to suddenly get off the karmic wheel and go back to source, to me, is just an egocentric Western idea of getting the final result, that we need an end result and we need to win the prize, and we're all going to go back and forget about everybody that's still suffering on earth. I don't think that.
And Mr.
Thank
Cameron,
you.
in our last interview, you did state that, by the way, this does sound very Buddhist in terms of the bodhisattvas coming back into samsara, into the wheel of suffering to save other beings. You did mention, interestingly enough, that perhaps your next reincarnation, if there is such a thing, you'd come back as a refugee in a war-torn kind of like country.
Yeah,
to
that's
try
what
to
I always
live
say
it again.
when people put down anything else, whether it's refugees or whatever it is. I say, get ready. You're setting yourself up. If you're going after whatever, you just don't have empathy and understanding. Get ready. You could. That's what you're coming back as, because that's what you need to learn. You need to learn that lesson in terms of whatever you're putting down, and not realizing that this is all part of the one, that they're all the same thing. So yeah, it's this sort of idea that there's we're saving ourselves, that this is some kind of race, and it's we're going to win it or whatever. Yeah, I would easily. Lots of times I think about, like, where's my hang up? What am I going to come back as? Well, what really sort of ticks me off in terms of things that I really haven't come to grips with, because that's what it's about. It's about learning lessons, and it's about making the world a better place.
Now, on that note, Mr. Cameron, I wanted to ask you, and bringing it back to the legislation with the Schumer Amendment, I didn't see anything in the Schumer Amendment that included experiencers or people that have been abducted with respect to the phenomena. And I was wondering about the agreements supposedly that Grush talked about in the News Nation interview with Ross Coulthart. Why is it that the Schumer Amendment did not include anything about the abduction phenomena or anything of the sort as this proposed legislation is about to pass? Is it because of liability purposes? And
No,
why?
well, I'm just guessing, but I would say that this is something they want to touch. Like, if you take a look at James Fox, the top guy doing UFO, he won't go to experiences either. This is a thing that really people don't want to touch. And it's a problem that if you take a look at the Wilson leak document that I leaked, it says no abductions. Kit Green says no abductions. You start realizing this is not maybe what you think it is. It's some sort of different event, and they really don't know. So people have this idea, oh, we've got this all figured out. We just got this one piece. We just got the government to admit that they're flying these crafts around. They got all figured out. As Jim Semivan says, people says, oh, we just got to put the dots together. He says, I'm not sure there's any dots to put together. There does not appear to be any there. The government hasn't got a clue what's going on. That's why Lockheed, I believe, wants this out. They started to leak it to Tom DeLonge because they had this craft, they had bodies and stuff, and they haven't got a clue what's going on, where these things are from or anything. And that's why you'll see all the government statements where they'll say, we have no evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence. They're telling the truth. They don't have, yes, this is real. They got crafts, they got bodies. They have no idea what this is about. So it may be just something they'll go to it later on, or they don't have the answer. And that's what the Canadian government said, is nobody's going to release anything that they'd really have an answer for. That's, the president's the most powerful guy. You don't want him standing up and say, we really don't know what's going on. I don't think they really know what these beings are. That's why they keep using non-human intelligence and the others and words like that instead of using the word extraterrestrial, because The big question is, and I brought this up numerous times about extraterrestrials, is if you look at the abduction research done by David Jacobs, they always do this thing where the gray does the scan where he goes right up the close, looking in the eyes, and he always asks the people, is he breathing? Nope. Nobody ever said he was breathing. So if the being isn't breathing, and you don't see the chest going, and they don't have any muscles, and they don't have any sex organs, and they don't have any reproduction system, there's no toilets on the thing, they don't eat, they don't breathe, they don't sleep, they all this kind of stuff, they don't have sex organs, they don't have any clothes, they don't have any material stuff, you're going like, what are we really dealing with? And that's where I go, is that this thing is going to be 1,000 times more complex than people think. They want to make it into a little simple thing. We got this one piece, these ETs, they're going to say it's ETs. I say they're not going to say it's ETs. They're going to say, yeah, we got this material, and there's a big mystery, and it's got this consciousness connection to it that they know.
So
And
do you
that's
think
what I
that
think changes it.
disclosure then just looks like the rest of the world talking like we're talking right now in this room? Just instead of 7 people, it's times 7
Except
billion.
instead of you and I, who nobody believes and nobody cares what we think, if the president of the United States stands up and says this thing's for real, everything changes. Everything.
But what I'm saying is like, do we get to know more than the 7 of us know in this room right now?
Oh, yeah.
Do we get more
Well,
answers?
you're gonna get the thing that there is physical proof. Like people say, prove it to me. Give me
fine.
some actual proof. Yeah.
It exists. Do we get to see that? You know, like what
Yeah.
do we get from this other than the President Biden saying, "Hey, you should have listened to James Iovino
Well,
there. He was telling he knew the shit the entire time. I don't know why you didn't listen to that guy." Where does that get us? Where does that get me? I want something out of this. I want something
There's
new.
bodies, there's crafts, there's men in black, and what they told me when I had the psychedelic experience. You haven't got an effing clue what's going on. That's what you're gonna
I
learn.
agree.
We haven't got a clue. They have this thing is way beyond. That was the whole story that Eric Davis, who I knew very well, Eric Davis said they took it off the shelf. They put it on the shelf in 1989 because they couldn't figure it out. It's called the core story. What do we know for sure? We know we're being visited by something. Something's interacting with us. We've got bodies and we've got crafts, and we're not doing very well at back engineering it. That's the whole thing about the Schumer Amendment. If we can get it out, we can get it into the white world, and they're going to figure it out. I don't think we're going to figure it out. It is so far beyond, and that's what the intelligence is doing. If you see the postings I was doing the last couple of days on Twitter, I said, why does a UFO do 90-degree turn? Why does it drop from 80,000 feet down to sea level? Why does it take off like a bullet? Because they're doing the whole thing. Watch this. They're getting you curious, and you get wrapped up in this mystery, and you're trying to figure out what the mystery is. And in the back door comes consciousness. That's what we're going to learn, is there's this consciousness aspect to this whole thing. And everybody's going to go, consciousness, the psychic phenomena is real. The channelers, they're real. That all of what we're talking about is going to come in. That this
7 of us already know that. Like, but do we get to
The
see?
world
Like,
does
will
not.
Neil deGrasse
Absolutely.
Tyson be happy, or is he just going to be like, someone brainwashed Biden? Why does he believe this shit? There's no bodies or crap.
That's his choice. That's
Everything
his choice.
is
Neil
Well, I
deGrasse
mean,
Tyson.
I know, but
happening
I'm not asking
perfectly,
I meant as an
okay?
analogy.
The main
you know?
thing science fights is the psychic thing. They're going to say, yeah, there may be UFOs, but the psychic thing, people will commit suicide before they'll believe that.
That's going to take a lot
Well,
more.
but that
the
changes if we can
scientific
reproduce
view
it,
of
right?
world
Like,
is
if I
wrong.
communicate with George telepathically, and we make a quarter appear, like that's like, look what we can do. Like, we can. That's verifiable evidence, right? So, like, is that going
No-
to change?
No scientist will go along with that. You'll lose your.
But of course they will. If I can make a quarter appear out of thin air for like real, not like it's really under my hand. Like, look, there it is. I just did metallurgy.
They'll say it's magic. They'll say it's magic. When the president stands up and says,
Okay,
that
then it's
stuff is
real. I don't
happening,
care. You guys go do your science. I can make magic. I can make metal appear. Have fun with your particle spinning.
But the world
thingies.
changed.
Good luck doing that in the
minute
third density,
that
by the
is
way.
confirmed that this kind of stuff is possible and that it's real, the world changes. It's not the physical. You're a random biological robot in a meaningless universe. That's out the window as soon as they make this statement and says, yeah, there is spiritual stuff, there is psychic stuff, yeah, there is, these people are coming through, they're touching a panel, they can go from one side of the universe to the other, as my 36 witnesses told me, instantaneously, like that.
I don't
That
think science
changes
is
everything.
opposed to any of this. They just want the proof.
Oh, yeah, they are.
No, I think I truly believe
Absolutely.
that. I've
Absolutely.
had this a long time. If you show them a physical UFO, they're not going to say that thing doesn't exist.
If
They're
you
gonna say,
show them
"Holy
the
shit,
physical
can I be the one
UFO,
who gets to
yeah.
study it?" Like, I think that's true.
If you show them the UFO right now, they don't see the UFO. They say it's all
That's right.
made up. There's no UFOs. There's no bodies. It's all just crazy.
Well, I would find that
people
interesting if
talking.
like
Mylar
7 of us
balloon.
saw a UFO and they're like, "I don't see anything." Like that would be. I'd be like, "Okay, this
It's a
is gonna get
Mylar
really
balloon.
interesting."
This is the main thing. Is science is gonna change everything in science, because science absolutely will not go along with this. The consciousness thing, the idea that there's anything outside the random, it's like the whole thing. It's a random physical universe. It's all happening by accident. It's all matter. There is nothing other than matter, and it's all random and it's meaningless. That's all going to be like,
That's why they
Ding,
can't
ding,
find a
give your
lot of
head a
the
shake.
answers. But then you
Yeah.
have scientists at the Institute of DOPS, Division of Perceptual Studies, studying reincarnation in children. You have IONS, the Institute of Noetic
Very-
Science, studying non-local consciousness, where they're doing triple blind tests with people able to do abilities where they don't have like the medium or whoever, they don't know who they're going to bring into the room. So they'll bring them in and they'll ask them, same thing with like cards. You could say it's a trick or whatever. You have them remote viewing things, but the people in charge of these tests are the scientists. So whoever they bring in into these rooms and all of that stuff, the medium or the person who claims that they're a medium has no idea what's going on. They have a website though. It's pretty cool. They go into a lot of their work. But yeah,
But
sorry.
these,
I think what if I may insert something really quick. I think once we start unpacking the like very tip of this iceberg, once we have some more semblance of acceptance, I think that
That's what we're doing.
once
right here.
once we start accepting this like as essentially reality, we're gonna have to start asking these other questions eventually of like, okay, are these NHIs that are visiting us, are they non-physical? Are they physical? Are they on the same plane as us, like the three-dimensional? There's probably, when it comes to all this stuff, there's like you, Mr. Cameron, you were saying like consciousness is like an ocean. I'm sure there's various fishes on various levels and everything else. Like it's a whole ecosystem. So these are all going to be questions that we're going to have to start asking, like as we start understanding the limited amount we can of what this reality is and what our place is. And just going off NDEs, obviously like this tends to be a school or like experience and different things like that, but our fundamental issue right now is that we think of this reality, the tangible physical stuff that you pick up, as reality. Like that's something we have to get past, where we can then get past like, oh, is this NDE or is this alien? Is it actually real? What do you mean by real? Do you mean three-dimensional? Do you mean physical, like on this plane? They can probably go between different dimensions, as it's been talked about, of why we call them NHIs and everything else. Like some of the technology of potentially these craft are non-physical, that they're somehow spiritual. What does that mean? What does, like, who knows? We can maybe picture our technology in a million years, but when it comes to integrating with consciousness and like, that's just something we're going to have to figure out, and we it's hard to conceptualize right now.
Okay, let me make one point about this thing about science is not against this. The guy I'm interviewing Tuesday is Dr. Mario Beauregard. It comes from the McGill. He was with the McGill Neurological Institute, which is one of the most famous neurological institutes in the world. That's where the MK Ultra thing all started. And he was fired in 2013. And the director said, "You are not going to do spiritual work ever in my institute." And he was canned. He had grants from all the grants.
I'd like to hear more of that story though.
What's that?
I'd like to hear more of that story though.
Well, I'm interviewing him Tuesday. I'll get him to tell the story. He tells the story how they said, "That's it. You're gone. You're not going to do this kind of research here." And he's now at the University of Arizona, where they do the medium stuff, where he gets protection, stuff like that. But here's a guy. This is 2013. He was fired from one of the top neurological institutes in the world.
So when you do that interview, I would love to get the opinion. So like there's a component to this, and I'm finding like the person I resonate most with would be Diana Walsh-Pasulka. Like, well, the question is not whether or not it works or it's there or we can manipulate it. It's like, well, do we really know what we're messing with? So if that was the perspective, like, so that would be the question I have to you. Like, is there a component to that? Like, we don't care if this works or not. Like, we don't want to be the one blazing the ground here. Is that what was going on there?
Is what working?
So like, was it necessarily skeptical, or it was like, this is just not our business? Like, if this is real, that's for the church down the block. There might be a compelling argument for that, right? Like, I don't know.
They basically said, you're not good. He said what they wanted him to do was research on drugs and wire people up and pharmaceutical and all this kind of stuff.
But for health benefits, or for like more like we're the DMT study, we want to figure out.
Well, the money's coming from the pharmaceutical. So you do the straight physical stuff and this consciousness stuff. And she tied it into spiritualism. You are not going to do any sort of spiritual research in this institute. And this
So like
woman's still alive.
when they were
Like, I
doing
don't-
the study, that was the purpose of the study, or they were studying like, will this cure depression? And by the way, we
Wait.
can also ask this consciousness question. So that would be like,
Well, he
you know what I'm
started
trying
to go
to
off
say?
the ranch. He started the regular stuff, but then he started going off the ranch. He did monks and nuns meditating, and this thing with plasticity where brains actually change based upon meditators and stuff like that. He was doing that kind of stuff, and they said, no, that's not what you're here for.
Neuroplasticity.
That was
Even though he had grant
2013.
money,
What's he
they-
doing now? Because that's
Well, he's
like,
at
to
the
me,
he's
that's
at-
like where the research should be, you know?
He's at the University of Arizona, and that's where Schwartz does the medium stuff. And there's a lot. That's where Consciousness Institute is there.
Parapsychology.
some of these
That's
guys
almost
are pretty-
reminiscent of John Mack when he went to the aerial school, and he,
Yes.
you know, coming from Harvard, he got a lot of flack from Harvard University for investigating these experiencers of children. Yeah.
Yeah, and when I was at a university for 40 years, and the rule was, it was an unwritten rule. I knew what it was you can talk about UFOs all you want, but do never ever associate yourself as this is part of the University of Manitoba. You can, as long as we're not tied in, you can talk about whatever you want.
But I'm
Is
sure
the
if you had
minute you-
empirical evidence and you could publish in a reputable journal, that would change the equation.
Well, it's the reputable journal. The reputable journals are all run by the guys that
Oh, well,
Right.
don't even get me
high
started on
priests
that one.
of science. That if you step offline, you're not getting your journal, you're not getting published. So you have all
I
other
don't know.
side-
Like at a certain point, if the results, like I said, if you can make it a quarter appear, if there's a UFO there, like
Well, the thing
the
is,
journal's going to accept you.
the thing
you know?
is, there's a book I have called The New Science of Consciousness Survival, and the problem is that you have these scientists that like hold this worldview of materialism, right? And they're in charge of a lot of big things. And then you have the people at like Dobbs Division of Perceptual Studies and some of these other places, Noetic Sciences location, actually getting the data. And
Well, some
they're
data,
like,
right? Like we wish there was bad data was better, right? We need more money, more research. Like,
yeah, but they're still getting data that something's happening and they're following that pattern. So they're like, you know, you have the scientists, the materialist science saying, show us the proof. And then they're
Biden's
like,
going to tell us
here's,
before we get that
here's-
proof. I mean,
but-
like,
but they're like, yeah, here's the proof. Here's the data that we have. And he said their approach, the author of this book says their approach is that a lot of these scientists don't even want to look because like, I know it's wrong. And he's like, at that point, you're not being a scientist because you're a scientist looks at all the data, regardless if it disproves his pet theory.
I don't know.
So-
What about the result of that study with the DMT when they're looking at the entities? I thought that was a really good study. But like, let's say I'm a
residual drip?
researcher in consciousness. Let's say I'm like what am I gonna do with that? You know, like am I gonna am I gonna potentially tank my career? Because if you're wrong on this, you don't get a second shot. You're working at
Well, he's
Starbucks.
basically done. That's all over. Again, he got lucky at the University of New Mexico. That research is done. He's out, and he had the bizarre thing that the reason he quit was because half the people were claiming that they were seeing beings, and 1/4 of them had the abduction experience. And he was
Well,
saying,
you know
"Have
what?
been
Maybe he should have
abducted?"
gotten fired then, and maybe this should be a divinity question, right? Like, you know, and maybe these colleges should have divinity programs that are real. You know, like maybe that's the problem. Like, if you guys
They're not
took
gonna
divinity
touch it.
more seriously,
The
then we
one
wouldn't be in this
even had the
situation.
line. The one scientist on the board said, "Even if this was real, I wouldn't believe it." Even if it was
Well, I'm with that
Well,
guy.
and because that's the thing is they're into this even if you take a look at the guy who did Roland Griffith, he was in charge of the lab that did the DMT or the psychedelic stuff where they had 80% success ratio with smokers. They'd take people who were dying, they'd give them 5 grams of psilocybin, and they would be completely content to die. And they did the depression 80%, even including combat depression. And at the end, he's diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. And then they say to him, "So did you do psilocybin?" He said, "No, I did LSD." And then they said, "Well, what happened?" He said, "Well, I was talking to the cancer, and I said to the cancer, 'Am I going to die?' And then the cancer said exactly what this woman said. This everything's perfect." He said, "Yeah, you're going to die, but don't worry about it. Everything's okay. That's the way it's supposed to be." And then he said, "Well, if you want me to get a message out, you should give me another couple of years, maybe." And he said there was radio sounds. Now that guy, you'd say, "Well, that guy, he's buying it." And then they asked him, they said, "Well, what's the chances you think that there's life after death?" And he said, "As close to 0 as possible." And I go,
Really?
oh my God, he's playing the scientific game. It's like and then he says, I'm a skeptical scientist. He's talking to all these people who have these experiences, these spiritual experiences. And then when you ask him, is there life after death? He said, as close as to zero. And I'm thinking to myself,
I respect that guy,
did
though.
you get some
I
bad
respect him.
psilocybin, expired psilocybin? Like, what were you taking? Like, it's crazy. But he's playing the scientist. He's playing, I'm the skeptical scientist. I've got to be skeptical. I've got to protect my
know.
job.
Because I'm still skeptical because like even when it comes to like I've had your same experiences and when I say I'm not going to say what I've done because I want to keep it responsible. Like so, but my issue with it is that like even I don't know. Well, you know what? Like I've dreamt before and had very powerful dreams, and those dreams were convincing, right? So then, how do I know that like this is not my brain playing tricks on itself? And we all have this common experience, and the default mode network is disabled. So now we all understand pantheism because this is just a common thing the brain does. Like I'm not saying I believe that because you've heard me tonight, and clearly I don't believe that necessarily. But it's certainly a possibility that this is all.
Okay, I would say this quickly. Skeptics are always wrong. 100% wrong. If you take a look at the left brain research,
Everybody's
where they
wrong.
shut down the left
That's the
brain,
only thing I know. Everybody's wrong.
where people are making stuff up. The interpreter in the left brain is making stuff up. If you take a look at the idea of skepticism, comes from Descartes. Go back and read Descartes. What did he actually say? He didn't say be skeptical of new ideas. He said be skeptical of what you already know. He said I may have to throw out everything I've ever learned.
Well, I think that's more from intellectuals. You can do that.
It's or as Mark Twain says, it's not the things you don't know that get you in trouble. It's the things you think are so, which just ain't, or the things you think are so are real, which just ain't so. It's the things that we believe, all the baggage that we have, the religious baggage, the scientific baggage. We came out of this time when we can't change our opinion based upon an experience unless we have the experience, and we play the skeptical game. I got to be skeptical about new ideas. It's the old ideas. It's all the garbage that is throwing people off. And that's why you got to listen to the experiencers, and they'll actually tell you from their experience what's going on rather than what they thought or what they learned in Sunday school or university or whatever. Skeptics, I say, are always wrong. They're never right, ever.
Guys, what if we're wrong on disclosure?
What do you mean by
What do you mean?
What do you mean about disclosure? There's disclosure already. They've disclosed that.
Yeah, it's pretty much disclosed.
If the rest of the world gets to know what we think we know, and we all know it for certain, I don't know that Earth is a better place.
They're just going to add a few things. They're going to say we got bodies, we got crafts. There's a phenomenon we don't know what it is.
I maybe like this is happening live during this call. Like I might be like, you know what? Maybe I'm anti-disclosure. I don't like this could get dangerous.
Wait, but you're playing out of fear again. I mean, it's
there we go with the fear.
Okay, I'm fine. Yes, I am playing out of fear.
Okay.
If you want to label me low vibration, and that's the end of it, like, yes.
First step to success is admission. So that's good. So
I'm admitting there's a bear in front of me.
and so you can move forward.
Whatever it is,
reacting to the bear was wise. There's a bear in front of
everything's
me.
experience. Whatever they disclose, we're gonna have to live with. It doesn't matter if it's bad. If they're gonna eat us, well, it's better that we know now. I mean,
I don't think I meant that disclosure.
That's right.
About that more than 20 seconds, but
It's
I had that thought for a short time.
I want to go back to, if I can just interject about psychedelics. Okay. Yeah, I take psychedelics often. All right. I willfully admit it. I'm proud of it. I am a psychonaut. I have been doing it here for the past several years. When I first started doing it, I was in my early 20s and I was a raver, and I'd go to the raves and I'd go and I'd dance. It was very tribal for me, but it never went past that. Okay. A couple years ago, I started up again, except I started with my fiance. All right. First time we did it was her first together is the first time she did it. I guided her because I had been through that steps before. Well, guess what? By about the third time that we had done it, I was on a journey that I had never been on before, even with my prior experience. And that was, I know people don't like to hear it, and because it's misused a lot, but that was because my vibration and my frequency was rising. My openness to my mind and the possibilities within this universe was open, and I started to have the contacts, which I mentioned earlier. I don't know if you were in here before or not, but it was slow. They took their time. They didn't just show up and say, "Hey, here we are." They haven't really done that yet either. Okay, but every experience that I had, I don't need science to tell me whether that was real or not. I know it's real, and the woman that I've been with for 9 years experienced the exact same thing. Now, I've heard of people saying, well, you know, there's mass what do you call that? Mass
Hallucination.
hallucinations. Thank you. Thank you. I can understand that, you know, everybody eats some bread that's, you know, that's kind of too fermented, and you got a whole little town that's losing their minds. Okay. But when you're experiencing these visitations and this contact through the spirit box, through the dowsing rods, through seeing shadows from their fourth dimension coming into the third dimension, when you see flashes of light coming through your house, when you're not on psychedelics, when the power goes out and you feel the whole entire the atmosphere inside the house change, like you're in a snow globe and everything else is, when you have these experiences, these downloads in your mind, that while you might not be on psychedelics at that time, the psychedelic is what first opened that doorway. Okay. Now, am I saying that anybody that ever wants to experience this, they have to take a psychedelic? No, I am
I
not
would discourage
advocating
it
that.
now. It might surprise you to say that. Would you discourage it too? Because I think I would.
No, I would not. No, I would not discourage it. Everybody's
George,
different.
would you?
I'm on the fence. It depends on the disposition, the psychological disposition of the
That's right.
individual itself.
It depends
So-
on where you're at.
Okay.
That's right.
yeah.
Depends on where you're at. So no, I'm not advocating that everybody just go out and get themselves, you know, a hit of LSD or, you know, DMT or no, you've got to be in the right frame of mind. You've got to be in the right atmosphere. Yes,
But
absolutely.
even if you do all that, you take care of set and setting. If we go back 30 years and give it a different vernacular, and everything is perfect, it's almost like the hitchhiker effect. But for that, like, people take things out of them, like you said. Oh, now I'm not under the influence of this anymore, but I'm still having this experience. That happens. It's happened to some people in this room that I know that I don't want to out, and it hasn't always been positive.
Well, the experience is what you make of it.
This is just straight up negative, right? Like,
well, okay.
Sometimes
We'll talk about negative.
What do you mean by
We'll
negative?
talk about negative. Sorry, Grant.
Spot.
I'm sorry. I just want to end with this. I want to talk about the negative.
And I should
if
shut
that's
up.
okay.
I'm sorry.
No, I just want to talk about the negative because that was brought up. Okay, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, we use the spirit box and we use the channeling rods. I'm holding them and so on and so forth, and she's taking notations. Okay, and we're trying to note down things that we hear. Well, then afterwards we're playing things back. Okay, so we're re-listening to the recordings. And there were two things that came through that were negative, that tried to influence us when we were doing this connection. Okay. First one said, and we have recordings of it, it says, "You are powerless." And then the next moment that comes through, it says, "You were the one." Neither one of us heard that when we were doing that session. Okay, now since then I've asked the entities, they say that was not them. I could get into a long story about that, but that's not really my point. Okay, but while we were doing that session, I was fine, but she started to feel uncomfortable. She didn't hear it. Okay, so you're starting to talk about the subconscious level being, as some reports have said, psychic attack or psychic greeting on somewhat of a positive experience. Were we under the influence of psychedelics? Yes. Okay. Is that something that we projected in and upon itself? I don't know. I mean, again, we're still trying to figure all this stuff out. So is there always a possibility of a negative experience being there? Absolutely. But how do you let that affect you? Okay. So
how
once
do you
we
even know a
came,
positive experience is positive? If you're going to someone else's trap, like if this is a Jungian trickster thing we're messing with, how do you know that you're not?
I know that. It is because
You know more than me.
Okay, well, I think you hadn't joined the channel yet, and for that I apologize for anybody that this is repetitive. But what I was mentioning to Mr. Cameron and the others, when I got that first hug, okay, and I felt all of this negative energy being taken out of me.
But a pedophile can make a child feel like they're loving
Not
him a hug
even.
before he
That's
does what he has
not
to do.
even. That's not even. You see, and this
No,
is the
no.
problem.
Why is it
I don't
inflammatory?
take offense, James. I don't take offense. I don't take offense. It's something that I had mentioned before. It's impossible with human words to describe that experience.
And I
Okay.
accept that
That,
you've had that experience, and I think you can also
right.
accept that I've had that experience too, right? Based on the way I'm talking about,
But
like
it wasn't a negative entity that was trying to strangle me. Okay. In my experience, a negative entity, whether they exist or not, Mr. Cameron, I'm not sure. I'm just trying to figure this stuff out. Wouldn't give me hugs, wouldn't tell me love all the time. We've had somebody that told us, well, as far as it might be the government that's going through the spirit box that's trying to tell you these things. And I'm like, I know how bad the government is in controlling. And the last thing that they would want to tell me is, hey, you know what? We come in love. Here, have a hug. No, they're not going to be saying that.
but
So
that's
a
what they did with the
negative entity
psychedelics. Isn't that why they released the psychedelics to begin with? Like they thought they
didn't
were going to
release the
control the population with
psychedelics.
drugs.
They were
They
gonna
didn't release
try.
the
They're gonna
psychedelics.
try. They're
They
gonna
tried.
try.
Yes,
Remember,
Psychedelics were
it failed
developed
very
before.
clearly.
remember, if you get into the government conspiracy stuff, they try. That's where McGill University. That's where they started the MK Ultra thing. You got to remember, in Ukraine, they're doing World War I trench warfare. If they have all this technology, they can come in your computer and they can make you think stuff, and they can do it. They should be doing a little bit better than they did in Afghanistan. They're up against a bunch of camel jockeys who beat them. I mean, come on. I mean, they don't have the technology. It's this illusion that the government is all powerful and they can come on your computer and they can make you have a heart attack on your computer. Well, why aren't they using this in the battlefield? Let me
But
just
what
make
about Havana syndrome?
what's that?
What about Havana syndrome?
Well, it's being looked at with the guys who do the experiences with the UFO. There are a lot of them, the close encounters. Nolan says this idea. It's or Kit Green, who's the guy. If you have a weird experience in the government and you have a abduction experience or whatever, they send you to Kit Green. He's been with the CIA since 1969, and that's his expertise. He's a physiologist. And he basically said it's all human technology. It's
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Though, wouldn't you think that would be Russian? Like, and maybe Russia's just holding back because they know we have it too, and it's sort of like a mutually assured destruction that maybe the public doesn't know about these massive microwave weapons
it's just
or something.
like a one-off thing where they get some guy and they zap him, or they just poison the spy for Ukraine. His wife just got killed by the Russians with poison. I mean, they do that kind of stuff. I just want to make a point on this thing about bad psychedelics. I've done 27 high dose sessions. I've had 5 bad ones. My experience is quite clear. It's almost what they say when they do the experiments at university in London, where they do the stuff with the what do you call them? The combat people with the depression, where they asked them how many of the experiences of these combat veterans, how many of them are bad? And the guy that was running it, he's this nut guy, he used to be the head of the drug thing for the British government, said all of them are bad. It's the whole idea. If you got to play a role where they're going to take you and get rid of depression, you have to bring the event to the surface, revisit it, and what they do on psychedelics is the emotion is at 100%. They turn the right up, and that's how they can have 80% success ratio on depression over 6 months. And so when I had my bad experiences, I remember the one, and to me it was this idea is if you take fear into a psychedelic experience, get ready, you're going to go for a ride.
Yep.
And you get in there, and then I had this, and
I do that on purpose sometimes,
but it was basically a hell experience, and they made me think that this was going to last forever, and I was just like, I couldn't believe it. And then I go, okay, that's it, I took the drug, I have nobody else to blame, that's it, okay, this is the way it's going to be for the rest of eternity. It was like bang, like that, it was gone. And I was in utopia. I was in this thing, and it was so. In the beginning of my book, I wrote a book on psychedelics, on psilocybin. My first 15 experiences. The first page is one thing. It says, "Surrender is the rule." Believe me, surrender is the only rule. What you're doing is killing the ego.
There's no rule. It just happens. You don't get a choice in the matter.
and so one girl told me that she was there. Her experience was that she's watched herself die and rot. I mean, that's a pretty horrible experience, but what they're doing is they're killing the ego. And once you kill the ego and once you surrender, if you don't surrender, it's the same as a near-death experience.
No, there's a strong correlation to death.
The bad near-death experiences are the people who are trying to hang on. The same thing in psychedelics. And so I said, okay, the next time they do this, I know it's only going to last, just surrender and get it over with. And they did it again. And this, again, I believed it was going to go on forever. And then it was over. It's like, oh shit, how can they make you think it's going to go on forever, that you're in this hell experience? But it was always came down to the same thing. As soon as I surrendered, I was in this high samadhi experience or whatever. And the thing they showed me was clear, and I had it numerous times, was the compassion meditation. I didn't even know what compassion meditation was. They took me through this where I saw the people were dying. I could feel these people dying on top, the people around, like when someone dies, and people, when they suddenly realize, oh, it's over. They didn't make it. They didn't make it. And it was that mindset, and it was dropping on me one person after another, all these people with people dying and stuff like that. I had 3 of those, and then I had the gratitude meditation, which is, you see it in the literature, this gratitude meditation. I didn't know what it was, and it would just be like you felt like you were the luckiest person to ever live, and then it would be like honey going over your body. It would come down over your body. And I remember I'd be in psychedelic experiences, I'm going, I wonder the gratitude meditation. I wonder if that gratitude dude's going to come and do it again. And it was like, oh, and it's like, there he goes. And it was weird, but there's definitely some force in there, like depression. I used it once for depression when my mother died. It was really horrible. And when it was all over, it was not only was the depression gone, it was gone. It was like nothing, no anxiety, no depression, nothing. And I'm going, how does they do that? Who's doing that? Somebody's running you through. And I remember during the experience, they because you're doing a high dose, so you don't remember 99% of it. I just remember, stop, I can't take it anymore. I'm like screaming and crying. I can't take it. I can't do this anymore. And they made me forget all that. But when it was over, it was like, how do they do that? There's some force that's taking you through a process, and you realize there's something going on. It's not just something opening up your brain patterns. There's something in there that's very knowledgeable. And that's what you're going to find with the UFO thing, is there's an intelligence behind this phenomena that's doing these weird things. And I absolutely maintain the government does not know. They haven't got a clue. They're still into the old world about weapons and nothing. There may be 1 or 2 people who understand this consciousness thing. For example, there's a woman by the name of Kay Randall May. She's one of the top medical intuitives in the United States. I got a tape of Kit Green, this guy who he was the control officer for the remote viewing program for the U.S. government. And he's interviewing this medical intuitive. And they're doing the same thing. They realize this woman's in the field, and what they do is he's asking her questions. Who are we dealing with? And she says, there's a portal off the coast of California, fourth dimensional portal. And I'm going, holy cow, he's using her. And he hires her at $150 an hour or whatever she charges. And he's asking her all these questions. And that's what I do, is if you have somebody who's in the field who can get into the field and get that material, then you go in and say, what did they tell you about this? What did they tell you about that? And you learn from those people. The scientists and the government, I absolutely maintain they haven't got a clue. They're still in the physical world. And there's very few people who understand, except the fact is Jim Semivan says, when he's asked who's running the show, he said, they're running the show. And he said, I do not think and he's got the briefing. He said, they the government, or they them, the NHI? They the government, or they the NHI? Well, that's what the guy was asking him. John Alexander, it was this big UFO guy, was asking him who's running it. And he wanted to know, like, who in the government's running it. And that's when Jim Semivan said, they are. And that's what I say. The message they gave me, the last message they gave me is, don't get so upset. We know how to land the plane. And then I go, this is all them disclosing. That's why they do 90-degree turns. That's why they do crop circles. That's why they put lights on the craft. They don't need lights on the craft. They're doing this show and tell thing where everybody gets involved and they're trying to figure out what it is. And in the back door comes the consciousness, where it's the same as the psychedelics. Everybody's trying to patent anything in psychedelics now, because they realize that you can make huge money in psychedelics with the therapy and all that kind of stuff around the psychedelics, and treat depression and addiction and all these kind of things. And now the money's coming in, and in the UFO field there's no money, but the consciousness came in the back door of the psychedelics. So people are getting treated for depression and stuff, but then they're telling all these weird stories that are they using psychedelics to help interface with the UFOs? Do you know? I think it's all the same thing. I don't think they're, I don't. Well, I agree too, but that's why I'm asking. I believe it's all one thing.
I wouldn't be surprised. I feel like they would have tried everything.
I'm sure that someone had to try it. Like, just give them some LSD and stick them in front of the thing and see what happens, right? Like,
I'm sure they've tried.
Someone's had to have tried that.
It's all in the field. You just can get in the field, and some people can get in the field. Some people are good mediums. Some are better mediums. Some are good channelers and better channelers. It's how far can you get in the field? What kind of technique are you using to shut down the left brain, the default mode network? Once you shut that down, shut the noise off, to get in the field. So, but I think in the field, they're pretending to be aliens. They're
That field
pretending to
scares
be,
the shit out of me, man.
you know,
I'm
like
good.
in 1895, 1896, people say they're ET, and I say, don't be so sure they're ET. 1895, they were the year we discovered radioactivity in 1896. They were showing up in the Western United States, and they were in wooden ships with propellers and big lights. And that's before we had batteries. They had big lights on these things. They're shining them down, and they were in Europe. There was 10,000 sightings, so it's not like there's an illusion. One person saw something. They were seeing it, and they said we're from Mars. And I say, if you actually believe this is ET, do you seriously believe that in 1896 there was wooden ships that came through the vacuum of space from Mars and landed, and stuff like that? They're going according to our belief system. So they used to be fairies and stuff. Now they're, because we're into the space age. And I point out, like, people say, oh, there's grays and there's reptilians and stuff. And I say, if you take the pattern of the sightings from 47 to 61, there are no grays. There's no gray sightings. There's no reptilians. Reptilians don't appear till 1980. If you take a 47 to 61, you see a lot of aliens reported with bubble helmets. And they got the bubble helmets. That's right out of 1930, 40 science fiction. And
So I had this argument with George, and I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second because I totally agree with you, and I think a lot of people are with you already with the subjective part of it. And I use the Ariel school as an example. As well, what if it's two-way subjective, right? So you have this entity or entities who are aware of the cumulative human consciousness, and they're using that to interface with us on a culture level. But then on the same time, like when you look at those kids in the Ariel school, they, on top of that, like a psychedelic, like it was almost like they were like someone gave them a psychedelic and they were looking at the same physical thing, right? So like there was like they chose a form, and then like the kids received it in various different ways. It's almost like a two-way. It's confusing. I know nothing.
Yeah, and they all were reporting different things. Some had the being with long hair. Some had two crafts. Some had two beings. Some had one being. The thing that was the most amazing about the Ariel school is because it has a crossover in all sorts of other phenomena, and that's what's called rapid image cycling. I took a training course, what's called the Bankston Healing Method. This is a guy who they claim that they can cure cancer. And what you do is you take 40 ego images, which the left brain is very into. You got a motorhome, and you have to imagine the motorhome and what it's going to look like in your car and what color the car is and all these things. And you can't say, I want to save the world. No, it has to be a very ego type image to get the left brain. And as soon as they said that, I said, they're shutting down the left brain. That's what they're doing. So what you do is you memorize these images, 20 images, and then they teach you to go thousands of these in a second. And it's a long process, but you get these images and go faster and faster, and it takes weeks and weeks to learn this. And what you do is you spin these images at a very high rate. And what it does, it shuts the left brain down, and then it gets the healer out of the way, and the energy can flow. And they claim that they can heal cancer. So that was called the Bankston method. Now, if you take the Ariel school method,
where does the healing force come from?
What's that?
Where does like the healing come from?
Well, it's just moves. It's like the energy is there. It's like people aren't getting healed. The people are healing themselves. But it's to get the healer out of the way that the healer thinks that they're healing it. But they can do long.
So it's internally healing comes from rather than external source.
Yeah, it's all it's all one thing. There is no time, there's no space. It's all one thing. But anyway, getting back to this thing, the one girl, she was very religious. Her parents were missionaries in Africa at the time, and she was Salvation Army, and she was the one that told the story. She's running along, and she said, "Oh, this is a flash out of the corner of her eye." And that suddenly there's the gray is beside her, and they're running on these logs. Her and this other girl, they're running on these logs on the edge of the playground. And she says suddenly she sees this gray, and he's imitating them, and he's running along in the air beside them. And then she says, boom, the thing's right in front of her. And she says, all of a sudden these images are coming out of his eyes. And it's the same thing as Bankston. It's the rapid image. It's like ding, 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 ding. These images are coming at like hundreds a second. These images are coming. And hers were all technological images. And at the very end, there's this explosion. And she said, that doesn't mean the world ends. But the message she got was, you got technology, but you could do better. The girl beside her was getting all these environmental images coming like this. Rapidly, and then you go to another experiencer out of New Zealand who tells the same story. And when I heard her, I said, "Tell me that story again." Like, they're in this. The beings take them to this underground, like an auditorium or something like that. And she says they're there, and she says there's an image on the screen, an environmental image, and all these people. There's 200 to 250 people sitting in the room. She says there's an environmental image, and then there's another one, and another one, another one, another one, another one. Another. She says they used to go faster, faster, faster. She says suddenly there was hundreds a second, and she said they had taught us how to do it. And I go, That's Bankston. That's exactly the same technique. They're doing it. And she says, and they're sitting there and people are crying and they're all, upset and they're watching these images going on the screen. And then the being comes out and he puts his hand across like this. They all calm down and all the trauma goes away, but the message stays. And you see these crossovers, this idea that these beings are coming in and they're indirectly, but they don't want to expose themselves. So they're not going to land on the White House lawn, because that's the way we do. We go into Iraq and we say, we're here to bring you freedom and democracy. Jesus is McDonald's. And then they point a gun and say, get the hell out of here. Who do you think
It doesn't
you are?
work.
Leave us alone. And what they're doing is they're almost like this idea that they're using curiosity to get you to go. And as you go down the road, unless there's curiosity, there's no scientific investigation. So we start to investigate, and in the back door comes the consciousness. So they're getting us with this like Jesus thing where they're doing miracles and they're all this sort of stuff, and go, holy cow, look at this. And in the back door will come the message once it's revealed that they're actually.
But why does it have to be like that? If you're going to be an ambassador to somebody, you're not going to scare the crap out of them. You're going to meet them at where they're at. Just appear to me. I'm a curious guy. You're a curious guy. Come over here, have a conversation with me. So this obfuscation, we're abducting you. We're behind the scenes. Something's not right here, man.
So some of the
curiosity is what solves it. They're not here you can't go do your kids' homework. They're getting us to figure it out for ourselves. We're the ones that are figuring it out. If they come in and give us the message, your soul can leave the world and take off. What do you need your body for? I mean, if you realize what it's all about, that's the whole thing, is you're not to know in life how it works. It's all a process of learning. And we go through the river of forgetfulness. If you realized who your last life was, I always make the point that when you die and you realize there's reincarnation, when you die, you suddenly realize your life was a dream that you learned lessons in, and the dream is over. And when you go into the next life, it'll be a forgotten dream. You won't even remember this life and get so upset about it. It's all about learning lessons, and we go through these cycles. So
yes, and there's also past life traumas that people hold on to, and it can affect them. And say this life, I may have had a past life where I was shot in the leg, or murdered in some kind of horrible way, and the trauma from that experience could feed into the next life. And you can go under a hypnosis and do past life, therapy, hypnosis, and go through those experiences and basically be healed by revisiting what happened and going through the emotions of that. There's healing in that as well, which is very quantum.
And the doctors actually don't understand, because some of these people, before going to a past life regression session, will actually go try to get treatment, take drugs, nothing's working, and they're like, what the hell is going on? And Dolores Cannon talks about some of this, and she's like, well, when you talk to the subconscious, higher mind, the soul, whatever you want to call it, and then they actually go through the trauma and heal it, it just goes away, from asthma to cancer to like you name it. And another thing, just to go to James a little bit too, about what you're saying about something feels wrong. And also Grant, because everything is all connected. When in my research on near-death experiences, you start to realize that once they leave the physical body, they're also given the awareness that we're all connected. There's one. And some of these beings, or higher dimensional beings, already have that awareness. It's called universal awareness. So kind of like when you're at that level and let's say your pinky toe, which is all part of your body, right? It's still a part of your body, even though you may not look at it as like me, like George or Leslie or whoever, because it's still a part of you, you're going to try to help it, right? And that's kind of like the view that higher dimensional beings have. And some of the near-death experiencers have also shared this, that when they talked with higher dimensional beings, that they don't see anyone as, oh, you're low vibration, so you're bad, and blah, blah, blah. They understand that everyone contributes to the whole, and no one's better than anyone else. Everyone has something to offer. So when a being socially gets to that point and they have that understanding, they know what happens when you die. They know about the life review process. They understand fully that when you hurt someone else, you're really hurting yourself, because we, again, are all connected.
I've experienced that firsthand, like first person.
Yeah. And it makes no sense to like, hurt someone. And some of the stuff Dolores Cannon talks about is that they've, like, the contact experiences that you were talking about, like, why don't they just show up and stuff like that? Apparently, according to them, they said they've done stuff like that before and it doesn't work.
Yeah, but we also can't trust them. So this is the point I want to make. So like, I would say more than half of the world believes some form of a God, or God himself, depending on how you want to define that, has put us here for a reason. And there are forces here that are anti-God, right? So stands reason to believe that thing that put us here, whether it be monotheistic God, however we want to define it, has us here for a reason. And then now these other beings that are opposed to God are trying to like take away that. So like maybe like maybe I touched on it before. I was like, am I really pro disclosure? Like, well, maybe the game, like it's like this fits even into Scientology, right? Like Xenu has put us here because we're in a prison planet, or
I don't think anybody put us here. I think we very much were proactive and
somebody put
agreed
us here.
to come
Right
here.
on,
Yeah,
right on.
that is a consistent thing about near-death experiences. They've shown that we made the choice to consciously come here.
I think
Nobody's
I think
forcing you to come here.
I think one
maybe
issue I
not,
have
but
with yeah,
someone's
James, I
setting the
think,
stage.
We have
If I'm setting the
apparently
stage, that would be
blueprints
interesting. I'd call myself
that
an
we
asshole.
proactively are involved with creating with our experience. We have experiences that are pretty much set, and then we can deviate, but we may run into these experiences because we agreed to before coming here,
Right on.
incarnating here,
Yeah, that is a
to
constant.
experience certain things.
There are no victims.
Yeah,
There's a lot of good stories. I like the CE5 story. I
But
do.
again, the CE5, sometimes it goes down the road of waiting for Jesus to come rolling in on a cloud, or the aliens are going to come and save us.
That's a
entertainment.
Gnostic Jesus, right? Specifically, is that Gnostic Jesus or a Christian Orthodox Jesus? Like, which Jesus
Well,
are we
depends.
talking about
The
here?
American Jesus with the blue eyes.
I would
Yeah,
But
say
you
all
understand what I'm
correct.
saying, right? Are we talking about
From
like
my
God is good or God is
experience,
evil, right? Which version of Jesus are we talking
there's the
about?
oneness in the CE5, that I am involved with, which is kind of our own. We're just doing our own thing. We're not following any sort of like, we're kind of
Yeah.
as a group
So
doing
maybe
what
you
we
guys haven't
feel.
confronted this. The problem you're going to have.
What it is connecting to the oneness, great spirit, whatever you want to call from the different traditions, cultures, it's all the same thing, but it's connecting back to that and basically assistance to help the rest of humanity and Mother Earth come to the realization that we are love, and to come out of this whole fear mongering, fear,
And
scared of everything. Like, we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and
What was
we
that,
are
Mr.
creators,
Cameron?
and we
Yeah,
are a spark.
I'm just
of God.
asking her, the CE5, because Greer will maintain any bad experiences. And I can reference the Mission Rama, 25,000 people, a group, pretty big group, Latinos, no grays, no reptilians, no mantids, no bad experiences. And maybe I'm
Right.
just asking you about the CE5. I would say no bad experiences. So this fear thing.
No.
Yeah.
So forget the fear for a second, and that I think I think the large portion of the viewership is going to be ignorant to what I'm trying to get at here. And I want to kind of ask the question because we kind of have to figure this out to at least some degree, or at least know where each other stands, right? So like, I've put a lot of study into this, as a matter like academically too. So the major difference between if you would word it this way, between orthodoxy and Gnosticism, there's plenty of differences like across the board to text and whatnot. But if you really wanted to pare it down to where we're really like, oh, we are butting heads here. Orthodoxy believes that salvation comes from without. So Jesus died on a cross to save us from our sins. That's the Orthodox view. Now, the Gnostic view, which I believe, and this is what I'm going to ask, this is my question, this is the CE5 view, is that Jesus says, no, salvation doesn't come from me dying on a cross. It comes from within, and you can find that salvation within. And in fact, that's the only way to get salvation. So they're two pretty, like, we can't, like, as a matter of fact, history, and a lot of people might even know this, like, Romans decided, okay, we not only do we not like you, we're going to start to kill you, right? So like it got pretty nasty at times. So that's the split that I don't think the average viewer is going to be aware of. And I would ask, because like, most people I talk to in C5 don't even understand that battle between the two kinds of Jesuses and where salvation might come from. But I would put that to the audience here about that.
Well, my take would be there's no salvation. There's experience. This is Western view that we're all gonna, go to sit on the beach in Hawaii and drink Mai Tais for 1 billion years. There is no end thing. It's all recycle. So there's a process. Jesus shows the process that it's within, that he's the way, the truth, and the life. That he has the example But in terms of the whole thing, I mean, we are just having experiences. And we have good experiences, bad experiences, and you learn from them or you don't learn from them, and you recycle and you go through, and the world gets, it's a loop that gets more information, bigger, more complex, and we're putting into it. We're the ones creating the universe. There's no, I still maintain there's no out there. There's no, even in victimhood, in psychology, until you actually take responsibility for a situation, you can't be cured. As
So-
long as you believe Hillary Clinton's doing it to you,
There's
or your
also some
mother-in-law, the
people.
dog ate the homework, you're
There's
never going to get cured.
there's also some people who actually there's some reports of CE5 being done in groups of people, and the moment someone in the group shows fear, they leave.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Um,
definitely an energy. If someone is, it's very important to be in a place of love and not to just, like you have to. The intention is what's really important. So, if you have these kind of feelings, like you shouldn't even be partaking in a CE5, basically. But what I did want to say, and I might have just slipped my I don't know what, it just disappeared.
Well,
So maybe
let me give you, there's a good example of that with Skinwalker Ranch. They talk about the hitchhiker. Well, anybody who's done ghost research knows that's called an attachment. It's very common in paranormal. And George Knapp says those that had the worst experiences on the ranch were the most aggressive to the phenomena.
Yes.
Brandon Fugel, who owns the ranch, says it's reflective, and he warns people. They pray as they go in on the helicopter, him and his brother. It's reflective. It will reflect what you take onto the ranch. Be careful what you think. So you see this Travis Taylor, the head scientist, goes in and says, "Oh, bullshit, I don't believe this stuff." And next thing you know, zap, zap, he gets zapped by this radiation stuff. I'm laughing away. I'm going like, just, like seriously, right? Or the manager went in and he said, he was doing an investigation when he first got involved. He said, "I don't know what this is all about. This is all garbage, whatever." He said suddenly he's dizzy and he's sitting and he has to sit down and stuff like that. And it's reflective to what you take on there. So the three guys, they tell the Skinwalker story. These guys go home and these orbs are flying around the house and stuff like that. And it's horrible, and this horrible energy follows them home. And then I keep saying, hey, were these guys armed? They were special forces guys. They were armed, and they're playing the Skinwalker. They hunt the Skinwalker, and the Skinwalker goes, "Oh, it's neutral." It's like, "You want to play this game? Oh, we can play that game. That's a wonderful game. We like that game." And these guys take it home, but they go in. Or somebody came to me and said, "Oh, the people got injured in this portal in Georgia." And I said, "Were they armed?" And she says, "Well, yeah, of course they were armed. Yeah, they were special forces guys." I said, "They went in the portal and they were armed." She says, "Well, we all have guns. They're the CE5 and they'll have guns because there's like rattlesnakes and stuff." And I go, "You take a gun to a CE5? That's the worst thing you can do, is take a gun to a CE5. It's the attitude." And then she said, "Well, they were inside the portal and the one guy died and the other guy got some cancer thing or whatever." And I said, "Well, but it's the attitude that you take in there.
Yes.
It's reflective." And that's another thing that you're going to see them say in this results of what they've learned, is that this thing is reflective. And like they go with this, the guy, the manager, and they said, "Don't dig." So they said, "Don't dig on the property." And what's the first thing they say? "Let's dig." And then it's like, don't listen. And they go, and he says, I got the quote, and I got a book coming out. It has a quote. He says, "Absolutely every single time I dug, something happened, either to me or to the machinery." And this is
What
this
was
whole
Sheehan
idea.
saying about Skinwalker being a psyop? Because he had mentioned Jay Stratton, and I thought Taylor, he had mentioned that they were on the payroll from the government specifically as a counter intel operation, sort of like a Men in Black, Mirage Men.
The government
thing.
was? No, the whole thing happened. It's this idea that the phenomena is teaching us. So Lakatsky is in the
But
Middle
you're
East.
talking about Skinwalker, and Sheehan, I think it was just yesterday, was literally saying Skinwalker was a sham, it was a psyop, and Jay Stratton is on the government payroll. And I thought it was Tim Taylor. Do you remember? You're shaking your head, George. I don't want to accuse the wrong person.
These guys, but again, the idea is you get offered $200,000 to be a consultant for that. If you're a military mind, it's the whole idea. You're always into building weapons. They're chasing the technology type stuff.
Yeah, but we're using Skinwalker as an example. Now, earlier on, I've heard the idea that Skinwalker itself might have been like, oh, well, there's a real place where this stuff happens, but we're going to pretend it happens at Skinwalker to like send the Chinese off or something like that.
No,
and that was credible. Now we have this stuff from Sheehan. So I guess what I'm asking you is, because you sound like you're talking about it pretty knowledgeably, in light of that knowledge of Sheehan saying that and some of that past stuff like, well, maybe Skinwalker's real, but that's not the real place. Like you're still talking about it as like current, like, oh, this was the thing that happened. It's like, is there anything we need to know about Skinwalker being real or not real in hindsight,
Well, yeah,
in light
it's
of
real,
hearing
but
what we've heard from
the
Shihan
guys
yesterday?
that Ian are talking about are guys that are military guys that still see this as a potential for developing weapons. And so they go to
No, he
this
said that they
Radiance
were controlling the
Corporation.
narrative, right? Like he was very specific. Like it was a Men in Black type of psyop thing.
No,
George, can someone correct me if I'm
it
wrong,
starts
please? I don't
with
want to be wrong here.
Lukatsky. They're reading the book Skinwalkers of the Pentagon, written by Colm Kelleher and George Knapp in the Middle East, and they look at it and they go, there's the stories. I said the reason I went to Skinwalker was not for UFOs. Jacques Vallée in his diary says in 1996, 1997, he writes in his diary, said, what are we doing here? There's no UFOs here. There's, like, this is crazy. What are you supposed to do here? And they're on the ranch and there's nothing happened. The reason they went there was because they were reading the Skinwalker at the Pentagon book.
Is Jay Stratton a Men in Black? Is Tim Taylor a Men in Black? Do you know anything about that? And whether or not
he was hired to go on the ranch and be the investigator, and now he's sold out and gone to Radiance Corporation because he's got a pile of money. And they're going.
But during the time, everything he's told us, Jay Stratton, he was like, "Oh, this big thing. He's going to come and be the next whistleblower. This, that, and the other thing." Is that all bullshit? Was he there to send us off the trail?
Radiance Corporation in the last couple of months. He's been at Skinwalker for a long time. The two aren't related.
I guess I'm not going to get my answer here.
No, I'm telling you.
I think it's unimportant.
What the Skinwalker.
Oh, it's very important. Do you don't think it's important? What
unimportant.
lines of disinfo and lies are being told is not important? I think it's crucial to everything.
I think these are things that are just set out to confuse us one way or the other.
From Sheehan. From Sheehan. You're saying that
it takes away. No, I'm talking about
awareness.
Skinwalker Ranch in general. I'm just thinking that it's trying to kind of muddy the waters.
No,
You know?
Skinwalker is the phenomenon. Skinwalker.
From Danny Sheehan. You're saying that
there
Danny
is
Sheehan
a
is muddying the
phenomena.
waters.
There is a
Think
phenomena
about the
at
energy.
Skinwalker Ranch. There is a phenomena at Skinwalker Ranch, and there are some there that manipulate it or use it in some way, so it might seem like it's a psyop. It's just sent out to confuse, but I do believe that there is definitely a phenomena there, but
Taylor
that doesn't
and
stop others for getting things to.
But that's
to
not what Taylor and
fabricating
Stratton
things.
were doing. Taylor and Stratton were pushing it as being legitimate. And if they're a psyop operation, we need to ask what their
It
job
is legitimate. It's absolutely. It's what's his name? You just mentioned him. He's the guy that followed him home. He's the guy that had his kid being bombarded with the orbs.
Yeah, but you keep shaking your head, George. So I know you've seen the clip I'm talking about. Do you remember it clearer than I do? Because I'm pretty sure he just basically said that Jay Stratton and Tim Taylor are on the payroll by the government specifically to sow discord
contract.
and doubt in this field.
No,
Was that
they're
during
on a contract.
when it was funded by Harry Reid, with respect to ATIP and going down there to
Yeah, wasn't that what
follow
was
up on
said?
Bigelow's research?
Stratton was only on the ranch one time. And that's when they had the experience where they got told, the voice in their head said, "Leave, you are not welcome." And they were so
Yeah, I remember
scared
that
they wouldn't
story.
go back on the ranch.
I remember that story. Like,
The phenomena is real. I'll tell you the story because it's important. The phenomena is running the show. They're doing all this weird stuff, and the reason the phenomena does weird stuff, it's trying to get your attention. So they had the book in the Middle East and all these high level military people.
yeah, but if it never happened, that's relevant, right? Like, if that's all bullshit, it's like,
No, it's not bullshit. This is what happened. Let me assure you, this is what happened. So, James Lukatsky is at DIA. I wrote a book on apports, on things that appear and disappear, and the Skinwalker Ranch and why he went on there. I wrote the story in 1974. There's a document from DIA that talked about apports, moving things. And what happened at Skinwalker Ranch is the famous story of putting the bulls in the trailer. The 4 bulls end up in the locked
They're
trailer.
stacked
And so
on top of each other.
And so if you're DIA, you look at this story in the Skinwalker book and you say, wow, could we develop technology from this? We got to figure it out. And the woman goes and she gets the groceries. She comes back to the ranch and she takes all the groceries out of the bag. She goes to the next room. She comes back in. All the groceries are back in the bag. She goes in to have a shower and her brush and this is very common. Her brush and her towel are missing and they find them in the freezer. All the stuff always ends up in the freezer. And so they looking at this. And so Lukatsky, who's a big guy for technology at DIA, says, I'm going to go to the ranch. And so he talks to Bigelow. He gets permission to go on the ranch and he goes on the ranch and he's sitting there at the table and Bigelow's sitting there and the ranch manager's sitting there. And suddenly this thing appears above the ranch manager's head, this thing from the cover of Tubular Bells. And he says he's looking at this thing and then he looks sideways to see if he's imagining, he looks back and it's still there. And I can just see the intelligence. The intelligence is saying, welcome, Dr. Lakatsky. We thought you'd never show up. And they do all this weird stuff, and the DIA starts to explore it, and they put all this stuff out. There would be no disclosure if it had not been for that event, because that dragged Lakatsky in, that dragged DIA in.
I mean, it
That's
happens.
where the OSAP came from. OSAP was trying to figure out all this paranormal stuff for military purposes. That's why they were there. And then the thing had got exposed, and now we got disclosure. If that event had not occurred over that guy's head, where Lakatsky seeing, there would have been no DIA, no stuff. The same as Jim Semivan is abducted. So Jim
Semivan, I trust. He has my trust, but he also wasn't named by Sheehan. There's poisonous fruit on the tree, and we don't know where it starts and begins.
He's talking about two different people. He's just talking about two of the guys that got famous. And in the whole thing.
No, that's not what he said. He said that they're on the payroll and that their job is to specifically set us off.
Radiance Corporation. You said the government. This they joined the board of governor as at Radiance Corporation, and Radiance Corporation is making these high speed missiles to with.
How do we know you're not Canadian intel in some way? Just a curiosity, just an honest
How do
question.
we know you're not?
Oh, I could.
Listen, I couldn't be cleared to drive a school bus.
Honestly.
I'm happy to let everybody
How
go
much
through
is
my pass.
How much is Mick West paying you?
Huh?
How much is Mick West paying you?
Oh man, if Mick West would pay me, I would do whatever he would say. If someone would pay me to say stuff,
you
I
might
would be happy with that situation. Please.
Yeah, Skinwalker is a very important story. I wouldn't ignore Skinwalker. It's a very important story.
No, I'm not ignoring Skinwalker, and I'm only saying this because Danny Sheehan saying it. I'm not trying to play a hardball because I'm an asshole.
But you're misinterpreting
Danny
what Danny
Sheehan just said this 24 hours ago, not me.
Yeah, I know Danny Sheehan. Danny Sheehan said that these two guys had gone onto the board of Radiance, which is a contractor, and he interprets by that they've gone to the dark side, that they've been offered money and they went in there to work.
So you're saying this is an interpretation of Sheehan's that he was maybe a little bit too factual stating on?
He may have some inside information. I don't know. But they started the reason they went in there was because they got orders from Lakatsky to go in.
How does Canadian Intel pay? Is that as good as the feds?
Oh, good. Yeah.
I don't believe you're Canadian Intel. I'm making a joke. I'm going to mute myself because I don't.
Same thing.
There's something here I don't trust.
Intelligence is running the show. They are doing this show and tell, all these miracle things. Everybody's running along, and in the back door, what's going to happen is consciousness.
Danny Sheehan has shots fired out there on Skinwalker, and we have not even got to the bottom of it even slightly. So I'm just going to
he may have some inside information about these two guys. They did join the board of Radiant Corporation, and these guys build, and they were actually interviewed. The chairman of the board was in and said, "What about UFOs?" He said, "Well, if we can get one of those, we'd be really interested in working on it." And George Knapp thinks Radiance Corporation is fantastic. So there's going to be some disagreement as to what did these guys sell out. I think they just took a $200,000 to $300,000 job. They were offered to come on the board there, and they're very patriotic Americans, so they're into fighting the Russians and countering the Russian missiles, and they're going to build missiles, and they're just making money. I don't think. Sheehan may have something I don't know, but to me, that's just simple. That everybody.
Okay, so if the answer is you don't know, that's fine. Just as long as we're not dodging the question or trying to change what was being said by Danny. I'm not going to let that go. Like Danny said, if I'm.
It's a corporation. You got to keep in mind. It's a corporate. They joined a corporation, a military contractor that's got bases all over the place outside of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. That's what they joined. So to link that to the government, I'm not sure that link is there. Maybe Danny's got it. I'm not sure, but the Skinwalker is an important story because all these weird things that happened there, all these ports, things disappear. I listed 20 of them. Things appeared, disappeared, and that's what the DIA said in 74 already. I quote a document in the book on ports. The DIA has a document and it says, if we could learn how to do this port thing of moving things from one place to another, putting bulls inside trailers, all this kind of stuff. If we could learn how to do the port thing, we could go to the enemy, go in the vault, get the documents, take the documents to Washington, photocopy them, put them back in the vault, and they would not even know we were there. That's an official American government document from 1974. They've been working on this a long time. So when they saw all this port stuff going on at Skinwalker Ranch, stuff appearing and disappearing, going through metal, that's the slide 9. The ATIP slide 9 is the whole thing about going through metal. That's where they got it from, is from Skinwalker Ranch. These bulls, they couldn't figure out how the hell do you put 4 bulls? And if you're DIA in your military, that's what you are. You're trying to figure out to get new technology, and you figure the Russians are working on this as well. Can we learn how to put bulls in a trailer without opening the door?
Can we learn to not be separate countries?
Yeah,
Mhm.
but that's
That would
the
help,
whole,
right?
that's the
Yeah.
main message. Oneness or separation.
That's right.
And even the United States is starting to separate into sections, and that's what we're doing. We're moving in the opposite direction. We're more separation, different ideas and stuff. And the basic lesson, I believe, that all the phenomena are telling us is the idea of oneness and separation. As long as you have separation, you're going downhill. And everything that is considered to be evil in the modern world, as I say, is created by one thing and one thing only: the mistaken belief in separation.
And
That's what
I
on
agree
that
with
note,
you.
Mr. Cameron, we want to thank you for your time. We want to
Thank
honor
you.
everyone's time here. And hopefully on December 22nd, the Schumer Amendment hopefully gets passed and it elevates the discussion with respect to the world understanding the reality of the phenomena. Mr. Cameron, do you have any last parting words of wisdom? And by the way, we have to do this again.
No, I've said a lot, so let's go around the table for other people to give their
All right.
final comments, the people that joined us.
Fair enough. Christian, go
Okay,
ahead. Or Leslie,
I mean-
ladies first.
Thank you. So, I just think that everybody has a reason and there's a purpose for where everyone is at this point in time. And that, there's a reason for everything. Everybody has a purpose. Everything is perfect, I believe. And, we are learning. And I believe that, everybody's at their own level, which is totally okay. There's no good or bad. There are choices, and we're all individually learning how to navigate this experience and get the most out of it. And I think what we're supposed to experience, I think, is love and bliss and joy, and not the opposite end of fear and negativity and worry and stress.
Bravo,
Like
you're
literally
hired.
everything really is okay.
You're
Everything's
hired.
okay.
You're hired. Beautiful.
Thank you.
And Christian, let's go with you.
I just wanted to thank you for your time. Would love to do this again with you. And also, yeah, I completely agree with Leslie. Everyone's at their own level of awareness. And something that Bashar says, I like to share with anyone. I completely agree that circumstances are fundamentally neutral, and that whatever circumstance, whatever you're going through, whatever it is, whatever meaning you assign to it, even though something may be challenging, whatever meaning you assign to it is what you get back out of it. So what you put out is what you get back. And I think that we're all connected. And as soon as, like, it's starting to happen, people are waking up, they're getting this awareness. The faster it goes, it's just kind of like a virus. It's infectious. And once we all get this, we're heading towards a better world, I
Beautiful.
believe.
I like that. We are one.
Yes.
Just I've never said it to anybody before in my life. I said at this point in time, at this very moment, I said you are enlightened, not meaning that she's reached godhood or anything like that, but she had that brief glimpse of enlightenment. And then I thought to myself, well, I still experienced it because I was able to witness it.
Oh yes,
And so
100%.
we
I
are
agree.
we are all experiencers. We are all experiencers. And
Yeah.
my name is John. I have a small TikTok account. That's as far as I've taken it so far. It's at we_r_1_consciousness. Sorry for the long title. Looking to eventually get into the YouTubes. I just, again, I have to say that no one is alone out there, just like humanity is not alone within the universe. And the message is what's important to me. And the message is just as important if one person hears it than if a whole crowd of people hear it, because one is all.
The ripple.
And so that's right. So feel free. I mean, we're all water droplets that are going down the stream, and where we make a river. And it's that uncharted river that we're traveling down right now. And hopefully, here coming in December and next year, we can go down that river farther. So
I
again,
think we're
that's how you
going
can
up a
reach me for now.
spiral now.
I like that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Let's go up
Thank
the
you for
spiral.
this. And Christian, we're wrapping it up here. If you can go ahead and share with the audience your social media platform.
Oh, yeah. You can find me on TikTok. That's at symbol transcendent vibe. And also you can use at transcendent vibe to find me on YouTube as well. The channel's called Transcendence, but that's how you'll find me.
And then my name is Daniel. I go by Gray Druid. I have TikTok and YouTube, mainly TikTok. And hopefully we're going to get another channel going pretty soon with me, Chris, and John. So that would be Cosmic Convergence, and we're still in the works with that. But yeah, that's kind of where, and my channel pretty much goes into remote viewing and NHI and consciousness connection. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm only here because George needs somebody to accuse somebody of being Canadian Intel Live. And I resist that. Like he begs me to do these things with him because he knows I'll do that. And I've agreed to do that because I've already tested a few political things. I work in politics and media and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I'm making the bargain with him that I'll do this more with him if he gives me what I want and lets me work with UAP Society to do some like grassroots, like community organizing type of stuff around the issue. Like I'd love to like make some like taunting billboards in Mike Turner's district and stuff like that. Just really starting to have some fun with it. And like, I think that like I've put out some feelers. I think there's things we could do there. So I don't have a channel. Maybe you'll never see me again, but I plan to accuse other people of being Canadian Intel too, because I don't really believe Grant Cameron is. I just had fun saying it. Thanks, guys.
Well, thanks for what you do. You mentioned Turner, and this reminds me, I'm promoting Michael Harbaugh, who is running against Turner in the 10th district of Ohio.
Oh, we need to talk then. We need to like, George, can you grab this man's info? Because when I
Sure
like,
will.
so
There's
what
a
I need to do, and
demonstration.
we should do this offline, I guess. Like
Hang on.
we need to
No,
get the legal
this
arm
is
set
key.
up because like I'm trying to tell him like I can get money. Money's not a problem. You need to have like legal entities set up to put the money into and know how you're going to spend it. You can't just go out there and raise money. So I'm gonna have George hook up with you, and
Yeah.
I wanna whatever you're doing there, I want to support it heavily.
Beautiful, because there's a demonstration in front of Turner's office on Friday and Saturday from 3 till 6 o'clock in the
In
evening
DC or Ohio.
in Dayton, Ohio.
That's
I wish I
fine.
still lived in Ohio.
Yeah, so that's interesting that's happening as we speak. So there are some grassroots people that are, not just tweeting or talking or whatever. That this guy's put his sort of career on the line, and he's going out to take on I call him the king of the cabal, the Illuminati, the head guy he's taking on.
Oh
So
man,
that's
it's gonna be
happening.
fun. Dude, didn't I not ping you yesterday, George? Like asking my friend from Ohio if he lived in Dayton, does he want to run? Were you?
sure
I
did.
pinged you for that, did I not?
That was synchronistic.
Hey, at
as
least
for
with the
Canadian
UAP
thing,
subject, at least with the UAP subject in my state, it's Burchett. So at least I live in
And-
Burchett State as far as NHI and UAP. At least he's one of my representatives as far as that goes.
And as
Go
to the
Burchett,
Canadian
keep doing
thing,
what you're doing.
if you knew Canadians don't care about anything. They just worry about hockey. That's all we're worried
Well,
about.
I'm a Ranger fan, and I go to Montreal for games and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm a big
You
fan of
Americans
Canadian.
are
I
always
like it
talking
better
about
when you
First
guys are
Amendment
angry
rights,
at me for
Second
being
Amendment
a Ranger
rights,
fan.
Fourth Amendment rights, and Canadians say, what about your rights? And we go, we got a constitution. I'm like, really? Do we? Nobody really
Do I
cares.
have a Ranger hat here?
The one thing I'll just leave, because we did have a thing with back and forth on this thing about good and bad and this sort of thing. I used to talk a lot with Linda Howe, who's sort of doing her own thing now, very famous
She's a legend.
researcher. And she was always very big into the aliens are fighting over the planet and they're having wars among themselves. And I would say, we'd have dinner all the time. And I'd say, Linda, it's almost like we're today, this back and forth. I'd say, Linda, doesn't make sense. Like aliens are telepathic. How do you sneak up? How do they sneak up on each other? And so we'd have these discussions, and there's a thing that you should look. It's actually pretty funny. She confronts Bashar, whose name has come up here quite a few times, and she's asking Bashar about the evil aliens. She's going, no. And then
I think I've seen that.
up and she says, which race should we be afraid of? And he goes, you. And she goes, me?
Uh-huh.
Like me personally? And
I've
he
seen
said,
that one.
no,
That's a
you
good one.
not. No, it's
Yeah, I've
how
seen
you don't understand how to interpret reality, how in reality actually works. It was really funny. It's because that was the discussion we always had with back and forth. And I go like, we're just going around in circles, Linda. It's not going anywhere. But just that thing. And I really don't have any reminder of the interview I'm having with Mario Beauregard on Tuesday at 12:30. It'll be live on my Facebook, Presidential UFO Facebook. The YouTube I really don't run anymore, and I have a podcast that I'm going to put this on, and the Beauregard interview, because I consider that very important. He's one of the top authorities in the world on neurology and consciousness, and that's my podcast is Paranormal UFO Consciousness podcast. And so it'll be on there. But thank you everybody for what you do. And I really appreciate seeing young people here. I used to call them the people that are in hockey. I used to call them the first group that came up. I called them the Young Guns. That was a hockey expression that everybody would buy the hockey cards, and you'd get who's the guy's card's going to sell for millions of dollars, 10 years from now. And we used to call them the Young Guns. We'd look for the Young Gun cards. And you guys are the Young Guns of the future world, the people who are going to be running it. And I appreciate the fact that you're here and you've taken interest, and that I can learn from you, and that you're going to take this after I get out of this field. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron.
Thank
We're going to
you,
carry
Cameron.
the torch of your research and all of your
There you
hard work that you've done over the decades. We're going to carry it forward into the subsequent generations.
And as you know, anytime you want to talk, I can talk endlessly without stopping. So.
We're going to do this again,
Clearly so
Mr.
can we.
Cameron. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.